Chapter 369. The holding of the saber drawing ceremony could be said to have set off a huge uproar in the cultivation world. A treasured saber from the Eastern Holy Land. This gimmick alone was enough to attract people. What kind of place was the Eastern Holy Land? It was an ancient battlefield where ancient spiritual treasures had been used for generations. No one knew how many mysterious things were left there. In addition, Yu Qianqiu had defeated the Daluo sect master with this saber, so it was hard not to be jealous. The major sects gathered their masters and counted the spirit stones in their storage. They were all full of confidence and prepared to get the saber back. Some small sects that were not strong enough also asked their ancestors to help. Some small sects that did not have enough spirit stones even borrowed money from everywhere to give it a try. Who wouldn't be tempted by a mere 10 million spirit stones that could possibly be exchanged for a spiritual treasure? After all, the saber was very strange. It was not something that could be obtained by someone with a high cultivation level. Luo Qingtian's cultivation level was high, right? He still could not take it away. Yu Qianqiu's cultivation level was not high, right? He still chased Luo Qingtian everywhere with the saber in his hand. For a time, no one in the cultivation world mentioned the fact that Yu Qianqiu defeated Luo Qingtian. Everyone was concerned about who could take the saber away. It was very likely to be a spiritual treasure. Whoever got it, even if they did not have the fortune to enjoy it, they could still auction it at the Wu clan. That would be a big profit. At this time, Yu Qianqiu released important news to the outside world through the 4 major families. I, Yu Qianqiu, am really ashamed that I have alarmed the entire cultivation world because of this small matter. Good things come in pairs. I am willing to take out the other treasured saber for the saber drawing contest. Both sabers will be drawn at the same time, so that those who have the ability to get this saber will not return empty-handed. The cultivation world was shocked again. If some people felt that there was no hope for one saber, then there was much more hope for 2 sabers. Therefore, all the sects were actively preparing spirit stones. Big sects like the Fuxian Island and the 10,000 Demons had many talents and strong financial resources. They were even more prepared to get the 2 sabers in one go. The East Sea was far away, and the blue waves surged to the heavens. Seabirds soared on a lonely island in the sea. It was unknown when many more buildings had appeared between the mountains, but on the waist of the highest peak on the island, there was even a grand palace that was neither too big nor too small. The island was a nameless island, but the palace was called the Limitless Palace. Therefore, the island was also called the Limitless Island. The owner of the Limitless Palace was none other than the father and son of the Yan family who were forced to flee overseas. Within the palace, Yan Bugue was at the entrance of the terrifying crypt, anxiously pacing back and forth with his fists clasped. Purr. Purr. Mournful howls could be heard coming from the crypt, and the sound was extremely heart-wrenching. Yan Bugue was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. He stopped in his tracks and leaned against the entrance of the crypt, tears streaming down his face. After a long time, the screams stopped, but heavy breathing could still be heard from inside. At this moment, 7 people dressed in distinctive clothing walked out one after another. All 7 of them were drenched in sweat, as if they had been soaked in water. The leader was a burly man with a leather waistcoat and a black cloak. His bare arms were drenched in sweat. Seeing them come out, Yan Bugue rushed over and pulled that man, asking anxiously, "State Preceptor Man how's the star chasing?" The man called State Preceptor Man who let out a long breath and nodded, "It's a success. Young Palace Master's wisdom is indeed extraordinary. For so many years, countless people have died under the 7-star blood-piercing technique, but no one has ever succeeded. To think that young Palace Master actually made it through." Hearing that it was a success, Yan Bugue was anxious to see his son. He wanted to rush into the crypt, but was pulled back by the State Preceptor Man who. The latter shook his head and said, Palace Master Yen, it's better not to go in now. Young Palace Master has just formed his devil body through the 7-star blood-piercing technique, and his wisdom has changed greatly. I'm afraid that no one will recognize him for the time being. If you go in, it might cause a misunderstanding. Please wait patiently for a day. Devil body. Yen Bugue exclaimed, "What devil body? What did you say? What did you do to the star chasing?" Palace Master Yen, don't be impatient. Man who comforted kindly, it's not that we want to hide it from you, but young Palace Master asked us to do this. He said that he doesn't want you to worry. Now that the devil body has been formed, young Palace Master's future cultivation speed will increase by leaps and bounds. He will have great achievements in the cultivation world. Yen Bugue was after all not a 3-year-old child. After knowing that his son was fine, he quickly calmed down. However, he still had a gloomy expression on his face as his gaze swept over the 7 of them. He said in a deep voice, "You'd better not hide anything from me. If you dare to plot against us father and son, we'll just perish together. No one will have an easy time. Palace Master Yen is worrying too much. You and I have sworn an oath. We will help you unify China's cultivation world, and after we succeed, you will use the entire China's power to help us find the star bead. After that, we will have nothing to do with each other. How can we plot against each other?" Man who patted Yen Bugue's shoulder and said, "Palace Master Yen, let's go out and talk. I will tell you everything in detail." Yen Bugue waved his sleeve and left angrily, leaving the 7 people looking at each other in dismay. These 7 people were originally 7 martial brothers. They were all disciples of the same master. Man who was their martial brother and also the Dirong Empire's imperial teacher. Eldest martial brother, he is just a stray dog. If we did not save him, he would have lost his life. Humph. He is only a crossing tribulation middle stage cultivator, yet he dares to vent his anger on us crossing tribulation late stage cultivators. He must be tired of living. I don't understand, why do we have to rely on him? Could it be that our country's cultivation world combined can't defeat China's cultivation world? The 7th martial brother, who was ranked last, transmitted his voice. Man who glared at him and transmitted his voice back, China's cultivation world is deeply rooted in xenophobia. Even if we join forces and conquer it, we will face long-term troubles. We will not be able to organize an effective force to find the star bead. This Yen father and son, especially that Yen Juexing, are the #1 sects in both the righteous and demonic Tao. They also have some power in their hands. They are good targets for us to use. In the future, don't talk nonsense like this. Man who finished speaking and turned to leave. The 6 looked at each other and silently followed. In the main hall, Yen Bugue had already dismissed everyone and stood with his hands behind his back. Man who came out from behind and immediately laughed, "Palace Lord Yen is still angry." Yen Bugue turned around and said in a deep voice, "Man who, what is going on?" Man who slightly smiled and directly asked, "Palace Lord Yen, have you heard of the demonic Tao?" Yen Bugue coldly snorted, "This old man comes from the #1 sect of the demonic Tao, 10,000 demons. How can I not know the principles of the demonic Tao?" No, Palace Lord Yen misunderstood. I am talking about the ancient demonic Tao, which is even more ancient than the ancient era. It is not the current demonic Tao of the cultivation world. Man who said with a smile. Ancient. That is at least a few 100,000 years ago. How can this old man know about such a distant matter? Yen Bugue changed the topic and said unhappily, "Man who, don't try to change the topic. I'm asking about my son, Yen Juexing. What happened?" Man who didn't get angry, he laughed and said, "Palace Master Yen is usually a very calm person, how come today?" Okay, long story short, if you want to explain the matter of young Palace Master clearly, you have to start from the ancient demonic path. Yen Bugui asked, could it be that what you did to him is related to the ancient demonic Tao? Man Hu nodded and looked outside the main hall and said, it is said that in the ancient era, there was not only the immortal world and underworld. There was also a world called the demon world. It said that the demon world is a place that even the immortal and netherworld fear. However, someone sealed the passage to the demon world, so the ancient demon path faded out of people's sight. Until now, very few people know about it. There is such a thing. This old man comes from the demonic Tao. How can I not know about this? Yen Bugui was surprised. Man Hu laughed and said, the difference between Palace Lord Yen's Devil Tao and Righteous Tao is that the Devil Tao is different. The ancient Devil Tao is the true Great Tao. Compared to the current Devil Tao, it's like a grain of rice trying to compete with the bright moon. It's not worth mentioning, really not worth mentioning. Then how do you know about it? Yen Bugui asked doubtfully. Man Hu proudly said, 200 years ago, I became the state preceptor of the Di-Rong Empire. I happened to find a set of rare animal skin ancient books in the collection of ancient books in the inner palace. But because the characters on it were too old, no one could recognize it. So, it was left unused. Coincidentally, my master is an expert in ancient texts. I have been cultivating with my master for many years and have dabbled in it. So I recognize the origin of this book. What origin? Yen Bugui couldn't help but ask. Devil Book. Man Hu's expression was solemn as he slowly said, it simply introduces some matters of the ancient demonic Tao. In fact, it is a set of devil arts. Chapter 370. Great Devil Arts. Yen Bugui savored these words and suddenly felt uneasy. The sudden palpitation in his heart was hard to describe. It was as if one was trapped in a swamp, oppressed to the point of being unable to breathe. Both of them seemed to have the same feeling. After looking at each other for a long time, Man Hu continued, according to the records of the demonic book, once a devil art is completed, even in the immortal and netherworld, there would be few opponents, not to mention the cultivation world experts. Is it really so powerful? Yen Bugui cried out in shock. I won't hide it from Palace Lord Yen, this is only one side of the story in the demonic book, no one knows the truth. Man Hu said with a serious expression, but the cultivation method recorded in the book is beyond our knowledge, even a spirit-severing expert like my master found it unimaginable. After my master personally translated the demonic book, he ordered me and my fellow apprentices to find people with extraordinary physiques to experiment on. But what was regrettable was that after experimenting with over 1,000 people, not a single one was able to successfully build their body. What? Yen Bugui's expression twitched as he said sternly, Man Hu, how dare you use my son for such a vicious experiment? Palace Lord Yen, please calm down. Man Hu consoled, it was not me who used the young Palace Lord as an experiment, but the young Palace Lord himself requested it. One day, the young Palace Lord asked me what was the strongest cultivation method in the world. I said that I didn't know which magic art was the strongest, but I knew that there was a very strong magic art. It was the strongest magic art that I knew of. The young Palace Lord immediately asked me, so I told him about the demonic book. In fact, I only said it casually, but who knew that the young Palace Lord would take it seriously and pester me every day. I was forced to lend him the demonic book, and the result was beyond my expectations. After the young Palace Lord read it, he resolutely decided to serve the devil and cultivate the demonic book. This was too dangerous, so I asked him to discuss it with you first, but not only did the young Palace Lord not allow us to tell you, he even asked us to help him conceal it. Unfilial son, unfilial son. After Yen Bugui roared, he stared at Man Hu with bloodshot eyes. Didn't you tell him that there was no successful cultivation method before? If you want to practice demonic arts, you must first build a demonic body. Man who sighed and said, I naturally told young Palace Master about the previous failures, but young Palace Master's strong determination is simply unimaginable. We had no choice but to lie to you with the excuse of using a secret technique to increase our cultivation. Fortunately, the young Palace Master's mind is incomparably strong, and he actually managed to resist the 7-star blood-stabbing art, which is an unbearable torture for ordinary people, and brazenly established his devil body. Even I am surprised. Unfilial son, unfilial son. Yen Bugue kept murmuring like an injured tiger, breathing heavily. It could be seen how important Yen Juexing was to him. Barbarian Tiger and the others exchanged glances and were about to leave quietly to give him some time to calm down. Yen Bugue asked, what about the 7 late-stage nascent soul cultivators under my command? They went in with you. Why didn't they come out? The 7 of them looked at each other in dismay. Man who awkwardly said, those people, I won't hide it from Palace Master Yen, the reason why the young Palace Master was able to establish his devil body is because of their nascent souls and blood essence. What? Yen Bugue suddenly looked up and said, you mean they are already dead? Man who silently nodded and said, they have already sacrificed themselves for the young Palace Master. Who would be willing to give up their lives? Yen Bugue was not a fool. With his son's cultivation, it was impossible to force any of the 7 to sacrifice themselves. It must have been done by the 7 late-stage transcending tribulation cultivators, but what could he say? Ding lang, ding lang. At this moment, the sound of chains being dragged came from the back of the hall, causing them to turn their heads. Shortly after, a person covered in blood and tattered clothes came out. His limbs and waist were dragging thick chains. When the person saw the people in the hall, he stopped and looked at them. His blood-red eyes caused them to tremble. If this person was not Yen Juexing, who else could it be? But with such an appearance, no one dared to recognize him. A handsome and elegant man had actually become like this. It was really hard to believe. The atmosphere in the main hall suddenly became strange. Man Hu and his fellow disciples all had a grave expression on their faces. After Yen Juexing's devil body was formed, they had used several thick black iron chains to lock him up. They were afraid that he would run out and cause trouble while his divine sense was not awake. Who knew that he would actually break the chains? How could he do that with his current cultivation? Xing how are you? Yen Bugue regained his composure and was about to walk over to investigate, but Man Hu and the other 6 blocked his path and said, Palace Lord Yen, be careful, young Palace Lord is still in a daze, unable to differentiate between friend and foe. Let him go. Yen Juexing raised his hand that was dragging the chains and pointed at the people blocking Yen Bugue. But the voice was a bit strange, cruel and emotionless. It was a bit scary. But he clearly still had an impression of Yen Bugue. He still recognizes me, he still recognizes me. Yen Bugue was a little excited as he separated the few people and ran towards them. Man Hu and the others looked at each other, but just as Yen Bugue approached, Yen Juexing suddenly fell to the ground. Yen Bugue screamed and helped his son up from the ground. The sword drawing event came as scheduled. Hat Island had never been so lively before. More than half of the experts in the Chinese cultivation world had gathered. Even if they were not experts, there were still many who came to watch the show. Most of them came with huge amounts of money. The prices of various industries on Hat Island soared, and all the shops could be said to have made a lot of money. Wu Clan spent a few days on Hat Island to flatten a small hill to be used as the venue for the sword-drawing event. The other 3 clans also urgently recruited many people to help. A brand new square was brazenly presented, and around the square were built sheds for resting. Of course, because there were too many people, it was impossible for everyone to have a place. Those who could have a place to rest in the sheds were those who were ranked at the top of their sects, or some famous experts in the cultivation world. The four great clans were so willing to help Yu Qianqiu, and it immediately made the cultivation world have a new understanding of the relationship between Yu Qianqiu and the four great clans. Festive. At this time, this newly built square could only be described as festive. It was crowded with people, the sound of firecrackers crackling everywhere, and red silk cloth was hanging everywhere. The four great clans were sweating profusely. They did not know what Yu Qianqiu was thinking. He insisted on sending people to the secular world to purchase a large number of firecrackers and red cloth, saying that it was an auspicious opening, and that it was an auspicious opening. When did the cultivation world play this trick? It was too vulgar. The most terrible thing was that Yu Qianqiu also asked the people from the four great clans to come out to show their faces. Everyone had a big red cloth hanging diagonally, and a big red flower pinned on their chest. In fact, Yu Qianqiu originally wanted to invite some people to perform dragon and lion dances. However, this was not popular in this world, and he could not find anyone who understood this industry. Thus, he could only give up on this idea. For a moment, the people from the four great clans could be said to be exceptionally conspicuous, attracting everyone's attention. This made the group of old fellows so embarrassed that they really wanted to hide in the sheds and not come out. However, there were many people with high statuses in the cultivation world, so they had to come out to greet them. They could only force a smile and come out to welcome the guests. Although this was unconventional, it had to be said that the atmosphere was really different. It was really festive, and there was less of the oppressive atmosphere of competition. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu was wearing a red ribbon with a big red flower pinned on his chest. He wandered around the square, warmly cupping his hands in front of his face, and beaming with joy when he saw people. Whether they knew each other or not, he could not stop smiling. Chapter 371. This sect should be able to fork out 100 million. This sect should not be too poor. Corpse sect, a big sect, rich. Yu Qianqiu didn't care about the others pointing at him. He happily wandered around. In truth, he was looking around to see what kind of people had come. He had caused such a huge commotion, and he was already prepared to rake in 2 billion high-grade spirit stones. Looking around, he slowly felt that 2 billion spirit stones wouldn't be a problem. Therefore, he laughed even more happily. Even if he saw a disciple from a small sect, he would be the first to greet him with a warm, good. All the disciples who met him were flattered and praised him in their hearts. No wonder he could make such a big name in the cultivation world. He was amiable and didn't put on any airs. Just this point alone showed that ordinary cultivators couldn't compare to him. It seemed that the words of Scum and Madman were just rumors. Rumors did a lot of harm, so they couldn't be easily believed. Therefore, many disciples from various sects secretly made up their minds to treat Yu Qianqiu's way of dealing with people as a role model in the future. Wu Sihai's gaze always followed Yu Qianqiu, who was wandering around. To be honest, Wu Sihai was really afraid of this guy. Experience told him that wherever this guy went, there would be trouble. This rule was almost 100% proven. Wu Sihai looked around. He had a faint premonition that something bad would happen at the saber drawing conference. That guy was a jinx. Brother Yu. Laughter came. Yu Qianqiu looked back and saw that it was Qiu Weiyuan. He also smiled and cupped his hands. Senior Qiu. Brother, you are too polite. Qiu Weiyuan laughed. I have never seen someone as generous as you in the cultivation world. You are actually willing to take out the 2 treasures in your hands to choose a master. Rare. Why does this sound a little weird? Are you doubting my sincerity? Yu Qianqiu felt disgusted in his heart, but on the surface, he was still polite and modest. You flatter me. Qiu Weiyuan smiled and stroked his beard. He looked around sneakily and suddenly said, Brother, you don't have to hide it from me. Is there any trick to getting these two treasures? Otherwise, how could Luo Qingtian's cultivation be weaker than yours? To be honest, I like these two treasures very much. If you are lacking in spirit stones, why don't you tell me? I will make the decision. The 10,000 demons will give you 200 million high-grade spirit stones. F***CK. You want to exchange 200 million for my 2 billion, and you still want to take it away. Yu Qianzhou's expression instantly turned serious, and he solemnly said, Senior Qiu, I, Yu Qianzhou, have always been upright and aboveboard. Besides, I'm not doing this for money. Senior, please help yourself. I will go and see how the preparations are going. He didn't want to be entangled with him, so he turned around and left. Qiu Weiyuan was stunned, and then he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It would be strange if you're not doing this for money. Do you really think everyone in the world is a fool? Everyone knows that you are relying on the sharpness of the treasures to get spirit stones empty-handed. How dare you say that you're not doing this for money? Sigh. It seems that the price is too low, and this kid doesn't want it. Yu Qianzhou, who was in a bad mood, walked to the temporary stage and asked Wu Sihai, Can we start? Let's wait for a while. Wu Sihai gestured to the empty tent on the left. Yu Qianzhou looked at the 10,000 demons on the right, and then looked at the empty seat on the left. Needless to say, who else could it be other than the Fuxian Island? He sighed and didn't know what to say. The so-called number one sect in the world, the Fuxian Island, should be more impressive. Their appearance was always the finale. While they were waiting, a group of people from supporting Immortal Island arrived. The one leading them was actually the Cultivation Pavilion's Sihai. Behind him were more than a dozen top-notch experts from the Cultivation Pavilion, including Dongfang Changao. Most of these people knew Yu Qianzhou. When they saw Yu Qianzhou on the stage, they were all stunned. Sihai shook his head and sighed. He led the group of people to their seats. Everyone quieted down. They knew that once the people from the Fuxian Island arrived, it would start. They all looked at the stage. You can start, Wu Sihai said to Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou nodded. Wu Sihai faced the crowd and said in a clear voice, Everyone, there is no need to explain the rules of the saber drawing assembly. I believe that everyone has seen the notice posted outside. Those who are willing to participate, please come up and pay the spirit stones. There will be 2 people in a group. Ziyi and Wu Lixue, who were wearing red ribbons and big red flowers, walked out from the backstage. Yu Qianzhou had asked the 2 of them to be in charge of collecting the spirit stones. When the 2 beauties appeared on the stage, they attracted a lot of attention. However, most of the people in the tent were looking around. No sect or person came out first. The small sects were too embarrassed to come out first. They were afraid of offending the big sections. The big sects, on the other hand, put on airs. This was probably the demeanor of the big sects. After waiting for a long time, everyone was still looking at each other. No one came out. They had already come, so what was the point of putting on airs? It was simply a waste of time. 1 minute was 10 million high-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows and jumped off the stage. As he walked, he pulled out a big black machete from his storage bag. His movements were neat and tidy. Everyone's eyes immediately fell on the 2 machetes. The calm atmosphere in the field was suddenly broken. Everyone was a little eager to try. In the center of the field were 2 black circles with a diameter of 2 meters. There was a distance of 3 meters between them. They were 2 black iron discs buried deep in the ground. Before Yu Qianzhou reached the center, the 2 machetes in his hands were thrown into the air. The 2 machetes fell from the air and stabbed into the center of the discs. The 2 machetes were about 2/3 of the way into the discs. Just the sharpness of the machetes, which cut through the black iron like tofu, made everyone gasp in surprise. No wonder even the sword of the Daluo sect master was cut in half. Just this sharpness alone is not something ordinary magic weapons can compare to. Someone discussed. The Daluo sect was not absent among the sections. When they heard this, their expressions changed. Yu Qianqiu walked to the center of the two machetes, looked around, and said in a clear voice, "These two treasured machetes are here. If no one comes to participate in 2 hours, then I, Yu Qianqiu, will personally pull out these two machetes and end this conference. The rules of the saber drawing conference do not stipulate that I cannot personally participate. However, after this, no one should say that I, Yu Qianqiu, did not keep his promise." These words were spoken with a resoluteness that left no room for doubt. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked back to the stage with a gloomy face under everyone's gaze. From beginning to end, there was not the slightest bit of sloppiness. Wu Sihai looked at the returning Yu Qianqiu with a look of approval. Then, he looked at his granddaughter, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. This time, the crowd could not sit still. Almost all the people in front of the tents from the sect stood up with storage bags in their hands. At this moment, someone suddenly shouted, "Let me, 10,000 demons, take the lead." A figure flashed out. It was Qiu Weiyuan. However, almost as soon as he appeared, his old rival, Dongfang Chang Ao, flashed out and stood beside him. He said proudly, "Since Brother Qiu is personally going, how can I, Dongfang Chang Ao, not accompany you?" Chapter 372. Everyone present was used to it. These two people represented the top sects of the Orthodox and Devil sections. As long as one of them appeared, the other would definitely come out to fight. If it was another sect that appeared first, it would be better. However, when the 10,000 demons appeared first, how could Dongfang Chang Ao, who represented supporting Xian Island, sit back and do nothing? The two of them were at loggerheads again. The people from the other sects shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They returned to their positions. It was better not to get involved in the affairs of these two guys. The two of them looked at each other from the corner of their eyes. They snorted coldly at the same time and turned their heads to the side. At this moment, one person from supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons each held a storage bag and went up to the stage to pay the spirit stones for the two of them. Ziyi and Wu Lixue took the storage bag and quickly injected their divine senses into it to count. It was the first time for the two women to personally handle so many spirit stones. This was all thanks to Yu Qianqiu. Wu Lixue looked a little excited, while Ziyi looked solemn. She thought that these spirit stones were related to the great trust of Senior Bai. After counting, the two of them nodded to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up, and a kind smile appeared on his face. He turned to Dongfang Chang Ao and Qiu Weiyuan below and rubbed his hands. Then, he raised his hand and said, "I wish the two seniors victory in advance. You may begin." There was a table in the middle of the stage with an hourglass on it. Wu Liqing came out and turned the hourglass upside down. The fine sand flowed backwards. There was only a moment, but this moment was worth tens of millions of spirit stones. Dongfang Chang Ao and Qiu Weiyuan did not dare to waste any more time. Their figures flashed, turning into two afterimages that appeared in front of the two sabers in the blink of an eye. The people from supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons could not sit still anymore. They all stood up and stared at the two of them without blinking. It should be known that Luo Qingtian's cultivation was not weaker than the two of them. In the end, he still ended up losing an arm to save his life. Because these two people had been representing the number one sect of the righteous path and devil path for a long time, no one could show weakness. The people from both sects looked at the two of them with a bit of holiness in their eyes. The people from the various sects also held their breaths and focused, paying attention to the changes that would occur when they drew their swords, so that they could use it when their side went up. Seniors, please be careful. These two treasured sabers have already developed a spirit of their own. When I was subduing them, I spent a lot of time and effort. If you don't have the confidence, don't force yourself. Otherwise, the backlash from these two treasured sabers is not something an ordinary person can withstand. Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted. Hearing that, all the sects looked at Yu Qianqiu and cursed him in their hearts. Why didn't you say it earlier or later? Why did you wait until the other party paid up? Aren't you just trying to scare them? However, when they thought about how he said that these treasured sabers had developed a spirit of their own, their bodies trembled, and the words, spiritual treasure, appeared in their minds. Dongfang Chang Ao and Qiu Weiyuan did not notice anything wrong with the sabers in front of them. They looked at each other tacitly and reached out to grab the sabers with solemn expressions. The group of people who were watching also had their hearts in their throats, especially the people from supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons. Buzz. The two sabers suddenly let out two sounds of their own. Dongfang Chang Ao and Qiu Weiyuan's expressions immediately changed. A bone-chilling coldness instantly emanated from the sabers, directly resisting the approaching hands. Then, a ruthless and cold aura of death pressed on. The two of them immediately felt a little dazed, and their bodies became a little weak. Something's wrong. Someone exclaimed. Everyone also realized that something was wrong. The two of them were sent out by the number one sect of the Righteous Path and Devil Path to keep up appearances, so it was needless to say that their ability to respond to emergencies was extraordinary. After feeling that something was wrong, they subconsciously bit the tip of their tongues, and the pain woke them up. They both retreated, and in a flash, they were more than 10 meters away. Their faces were full of shock as they shouted, "Good sabers." Everyone immediately stood up. Luo Qingtian had lost an arm to save his life, and Dongfang Chang Ao and Qiu Weiyuan could not even get close to it. The three tribulation passing stage experts' attempts had confirmed the power of this saber without a doubt. Many people's gazes towards the Daluo sect had changed. They were no longer looking at the Daluo sect with mockery. Instead, there was a hint of admiration in their eyes. Luo Qingtian, Dongfang Chang Ao, and Qiu Weiyuan were all cultivators who had advanced to the middle stage of the tribulation passing stage. Although the former had lost an arm, he had once held this saber, and the latter too could not get close to it. From this, it could be seen that the Daluo sect leader was indeed not someone ordinary people could compare to. He truly lived up to his reputation. When the people from the Daluo sect felt everyone's gazes, their faces showed a little bit of pride. It was as if they were saying, "Now you know." It's not that the Daluo sect is weak, but that these two magic treasures are really powerful. At this moment, Dongfang Chang Ao and Qiu Weiyuan released their aura shields at almost the same time. Just as they were about to draw their sabers again, they suddenly heard a dang 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 sound coming from the main platform. The two of them turned around and saw that Yu Qianqiu was holding a gong in his hand. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the hourglass with the gong in his other hand and said with a smile, "Seniors, I'm sorry, time is up. It's time for the next group to go up. Please step down for the time being." Time was up so soon. 10 million high-grade spirit stones were gone just like that. Not to mention the two people who drew their sabers, everyone's eyes were focused on the hourglass. They were deeply suspicious of the hourglass's effect. In fact, they had wronged Yu Qianqiu in this matter. It was just that everyone was so engrossed in the competition that they forgot about the time. Although Yu Qianqiu had the idea of tampering with the hourglass, he was worried that there were too many people present and was afraid that he would be exposed, so he dismissed the idea. Dongfang Chang Ao was stunned, while Qiu Weiyuan was furious. Yu Qianqiu ignored them and shouted, in order to save time, we will arrange the matches according to the order in which the spirit stones are paid. Those who pay first will go up first. Wu Sihai frowned when he heard that. Even if they wanted to earn money, they didn't have to do it so blatantly. He couldn't say anything, so he quietly retreated backstage. If he continued to stand in front of the stage, he really couldn't afford to lose face. On the other hand, his granddaughter, Wu Lixue, looked at the various sects with excitement. There was a lot of money to collect. The various sects were speechless. Although they knew that Yu Qianqiu was obviously trying to get money, who would give up? Wasn't everyone here for the treasure? However, this Yu Qianqiu was really good at messing around. If others had such a treasure, they would hide it, but he took it out openly to cause trouble, making it inconvenient for those who wanted to steal the treasure. They could only wait until he was alone in the future. Dongfang Chang Ao and Qiu Weiyuan did not return after a long time. The sects that the two belonged to immediately understood that they wanted to try again. Immediately, the two sects brought a storage bag to the stage and paid another sum of spirit stones for them. Yu Qianqiu waited for the two ladies to confirm the amount, then smiled at the two who did not go up. Seniors, please continue. Wu Liqing, who was below the stage, turned the hourglass upside down. This guy is too practical. Dongfang Chang and Qiu Weiyuan's expressions twitched. They did not want to argue with this greedy guy now to avoid wasting time. The vigor shield on their bodies became brighter and brighter, and they flashed in front of the two swords. Just as everyone was staring at them, they suddenly saw the two of them raise their heads to look at the sky. Then, they quickly retreated. Swoosh! A cold light shot down from the sky, and with a bang, a large hole was blasted in between the two swords. A wave of air spread to the surroundings, and a flying sword flew out from the hole, turning into a cold light and shooting back into the sky. Many people immediately flashed out from the sheds around them. They looked up into the sky, and saw a flying instrument slowly descending under the crowd's gaze. F***CK. Someone is causing trouble. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows, turned around, took the 4 storage bags from Zi and Wu Lixue, and threw them into his own storage bag. Just as he was about to go over to take a look, he saw more than 10 figures flashing out from behind him, and he stopped. Although he was angry that someone was disturbing him while he was making money, those who dared to cause trouble in such an occasion were not ordinary people. He decided to take a look first. How dare you? Who dares to cause trouble here? Qiu Weiyuan stared at the sky and shouted loudly. More than 10 experts from the 10,000 demons stood behind him, and all of them were staring at the sky like tigers watching their prey. The domineering aura of the Devil Dao was undoubtedly revealed. The flying instrument was suddenly taken away by someone in mid-air, and 8 figures landed in front of the crowd. Almost everyone knew the person in the lead. It was the original young palace master of the 100 Flowers Palace, Yan Zhuixing. And many of the 7 people behind him had met them before. They were Imperial Advisor Di Rong and Man Hu's senior and junior brothers. Greetings Martial Uncle Qiu, greetings Martial Uncles of the 10,000 demons. Yan Zhuixing courteously bowed to the 10,000 demons. The 10 people from the 10,000 demons were instantly discouraged, and they looked at each other in dismay. The domineering aura they had at the beginning was nowhere to be seen. Qiu Weiyuan looked around awkwardly, and said in a muffled voice, "What are you doing here?" The previous leader of the 10,000 demons, the grandson of his master, came to cause trouble. What else could he say? If you don't have the confidence, then get out of the way. Dongfang Chang Ao sneered at Qiu Weiyuan rudely. These 2 people would not let go of any opportunity to mock each other. Qiu Weiyuan glared, but when he saw Yan Zhuixing beside him, he immediately shut his mouth speechlessly. Yan Zhuixing, are you declaring war on the Chinese cultivation world? Dongfang Chang Ao snorted coldly, a golden spear appearing in his hands at some point in time. Senior Dongfang, you misunderstood. I heard that there is a saber drawing conference here, so I specially rushed here overnight to participate. I definitely have no other intentions. Yan Zhuixing smiled gently. You are not welcome here, please leave. Dongfang Chang Hao held the golden origin treasure spear horizontally in his hand, and behind him stood a dozen experts from the cultivation pavilion of Fuxian Island. Yes, you are not welcome here, go back. A group of people followed and jeered. Yan Zhuixing turned a blind eye to them and smiled faintly. I heard that anyone can participate in this saber drawing conference as long as they can fork out 10 million upper-grade spirit stones. I wonder if Brother Yu, who is organizing this conference, is here. He looked around the crowd, and after a while, his eyes met with Yu Qianqiu's. Their eyes met and did not separate for a long time. Everyone in the cultivation world knew about the grudge between them. If not for Yu Qianqiu, the Yen father and son would not have been forced to flee overseas. Ha! So it's Brother Yen, long time no see. Yu Qianqiu jumped down from the stage and walked over. He cupped his fists and smiled from afar, as if he was an old friend who had not seen each other for a long time. Ziyi also felt that something was wrong and quickly followed behind him. Wu Lixue also did not want to be left behind. The crowd parted to let them in. Yan Zhuixing also smiled and cupped his fists. Indeed, long time no see. I have been sending people everywhere to ask about Brother Yu, but unfortunately, there has been no news. I finally see you today. Chapter 373. What good can you have for me? It's good that you don't fight with me. Yu Qianqiu touched his nose, and they looked at each other silently for a while. Suddenly, they laughed together. When they laughed, their eyes were still entangled with each other. Yu Qianqiu found that there was something missing in Yan Zhuixing's eyes. In the past, he could at least see some pretentious hypocrisy in it, but now, it was really cold. His eyes were unbelievably calm, as if they were carved out of ice. There was no emotion in them. Although he was smiling, his eyes were incompatible with his whole person. There was only indifference in his eyes that could not be concealed even if he wanted to. Yan Zhuixing also saw something from Yu Qianqiu's eyes. It was the sincerity and enthusiasm of meeting an old friend. However, Yan Zhuixing would not believe that a person who could make up a story to frame him would welcome him sincerely and enthusiastically. Yan Zhuixing looked away and glanced at the women on the left and right of Yu Qianqiu. He did not know Ziyi, so he just glanced over her. However, when his eyes fell on Wu Lixue, his cold and ruthless eyes actually showed signs of melting. He cupped his hands and said, Miss Wu is also here. I didn't expect you to be even more beautiful than before. I don't know if you still remember me. As soon as he said this, the 7 brothers behind him exchanged a surprised look. They seemed to feel that it was a little unbelievable. Although Wu Lixue knew that Yan Zhuixing had a grudge with her man, it would be strange for a woman to be unhappy when someone praised her beauty. She smiled and nodded, but she did not say anything. Instead, she looked at Yu Qianqiu with a gentle gaze. At this time, Yan Zhuixing noticed that the man and the 2 women in front of him were wearing red flowers, which was quite a happy life. The smile on his face suddenly froze. He pointed at the big red flowers on the 3 people and said, Brother Yu, what are you doing? Could it be that I came coincidentally to run into Brother Yu's happy event? Ah. Yu Qianqiu followed his finger and looked at the flower on his chest. He quickly denied, No, it's just to add to the atmosphere of the sword drawing event. As he spoke, he pointed at the red hanging in the surroundings. Yan Zhuixing looked over and realized that not only Yu Qianqiu and the other 2 were dressed like this, but many others were also dressed like this. He immediately stopped thinking about this matter and asked, Brother Yu, I heard that this saber drawing competition is held for the entire cultivation world. Anyone who can fork out 10 million upper-grade spirit stones can participate. But now someone wants to drive me away. I wonder what brother you, the organizer, will say. Hee. In the past, he was so poor that he had to resort to robbery, but now he seemed to be rich. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and glanced at the surrounding sections. He saw that everyone was staring at him. Their intentions were clear. They wanted him to get to know everyone. Hee. That. I, Yu Qianqiu, have always been a man of my words, but... Yu Qianqiu looked around and said, there are no more seats here. He wanted to earn money now, but in front of all the sects, he could not blatantly go against them. He rejected them very tactfully. It's fine. I don't dare to hope for a seat here. We can just find a place to stand. Yan Zhuixing said indifferently. Dongfang Chang Ao snorted and said, I already said that you are not welcome here. With Dongfang Chang Ao taking the lead, all the sects immediately followed and jeered, get lost. You are not welcome here. Yan Zhuixing glanced at everyone coldly. Man who was behind him, walked forward and laughed, why are you in such a hurry to drive us away? Could it be that there is no one in the cultivation world in China who can pull out this saber? Are you afraid that we will steal the limelight? A few of his fellow disciples laughed together. With the cultivation of the 7 of them at the end of the tribulation passing stage, they were confident that no one present could trouble them, so they were arrogant. When the various sects heard this, their faces were already filled with anger. They might make a move at any time. Yu Qianqiu didn't want to ruin his business at this moment. He pointed at the big hole in front of him and smiled bitterly to Yan Zhuixing, Brother Yan, I wonder which one of you made a move and destroyed this place. The 7th of the 7 man who brothers stood out and patted his chest, I saw that it was so lively down there, so I couldn't help but make a move. His arrogant look seemed to be saying, I did it, what can you do? Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with him and complained to Yan Zhuixing, in order to rent this place, I paid 10 million high-grade spirit stones to the Wu clan as a guarantee. The moment you came, you want me to lose 10 million. What kind of logic is this? Forget it. Brother Yan and I are friends, so I will pay for it. Brother Yan better find a place to rest outside. Yan Zhuixing naturally understood the meaning behind his words. I paid 10 million for you the moment you came, and you still have the nerve to make things difficult for me. Old Seven's eyes widened as he stared at the hole and shouted, nonsense. It won't cost more than 10 million to build this rundown place. Brother Yan, is this your subordinate? Why is he scolding me in front of my face? Yu Qianqiu's voice sank. He turned his head and said, Ze, make him shut up. He believed that even if Ze couldn't gain the upper hand, she would be able to scare the other party into being obedient. Otherwise, that soul formation stage father would be for nothing. Ziyi's expression changed at the mention of money because of Yu Qianqiu. She knew that there must be a motive for Yu Qianqiu to suddenly take out 10 million. Hearing that, she didn't say anything else. A purple shadow appeared and rushed at 7th brother. The speed was so fast that it was unbelievable. Everyone present was shocked. Old 7 immediately felt that something was wrong. He teleported into the air. Who would have thought that while the purple shadow was still below, another purple shadow appeared in front of him. Immediately after, a loud sound rang out in his face. He didn't know what happened, but he was slapped by someone. Don't look at this slap because it was from a woman. The strength of the slap was so strong that it made old 7's ears ring. The people below were speechless. A late-stage tribulation transcendent stage cultivator was actually slapped so easily. Stop! The 6 martial brothers shouted at the same time. They teleported to mid-air and immediately stopped the purple shadow. Who knew that the purple shadow was like a shadow among the 7 of them? It had obviously stopped her, but it appeared behind her again. It kept chasing after Lao Chi like a shadow, slapping her face again and again. It was so loud that it sounded like a slap after slap. Not only were the people on the ground stunned, but the 7 people in the sky were even more shocked. Although the opponent's movement technique was similar to teleportation consumed a lot of true essence, so it was impossible to use it so wantonly. Only deity transformation stage cultivators would be able to withstand such consumption, but ordinary deity transformation stage cultivators wouldn't dare to use it too much. Paw paw paw. The sound of slapping came from the air, one after another. After a total of 20 slaps, a purple shadow flashed among the 7 people and returned to Yu Qianqiu's side. Her pretty face was still cold. The people who were closer to her subconsciously took a step back. This woman was too terrifying. Yu Qianqiu smacked his lips and couldn't say anything. Wow! I picked up a treasure. Old man Bai has good taste. Yan Zhuixing's expression changed. He thought that he would be able to intimidate everyone by bringing 7 late-stage tribulation transcendent stage cultivators. He didn't expect that he would be beaten up by a woman as soon as he appeared. 7 late-stage tribulation transcendent stage cultivators. She fought as she pleased, and no one could stop her. This. Wu Lixue looked at Ze dumbfounded. She had been with Ze for a few days and knew that Ze's cultivation was high, but she didn't expect it to be so powerful. No wonder her man brought her along every day. Thinking of this, Wu Lixue was a little discouraged. It seemed that she couldn't help Yu Qianqiu with her cultivation. Supporting Immortals Island, 10,000 demons, and the people from other sects looked at Ze and Yu Qianqiu. They couldn't figure out how this guy got such a powerful woman by his side. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also obedient to him. The 7 people in the air were stunned. Old Seven's face was swollen like a pig's head, but he immediately used his power to reduce the swelling. The 7 people flashed back to Yan Zhuixing's side. Man who stepped forward and stared at Ze. We are not as skilled as you, so we have nothing to say. May I ask if you used the great art of shifting position? Ze's cold expression changed slightly. She looked at Man Hu in surprise. She didn't expect someone to recognize that she used the great art of shifting position, but she didn't reply. Yu Qianqiu also glanced at her. He remembered that when they were in the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, the handsome old man Nongzhu seemed to have told her to use the form displacement transposition art to escape. Seeing that she didn't speak, Man Hu cupped his fists and said, "It must be the great art of shifting position." In this world, besides Mr. Nongzhu's great art of shifting position, there is no other movement technique that is so mysterious. May I know how to address you and Mr. Nongzhu? Although the people present weren't the top experts of their respective sects, they still had extraordinary experience. However, they had never heard of the great art of form displacement transposition and Mr. Nongzhu mentioned by Man Hu. They looked at Ze and Yu Qianqiu blankly. There was no time for them to interrupt. Ze's powerful appearance deprived them of the right to speak. Ze still didn't answer, but Man Hu wasn't unhappy at all. He sized her up for a moment, then suddenly nodded and said, "Just now, I heard the famous Yu Qianqiu of the cultivation world call young lady Ze. Young lady is also wearing purple clothes, so it shouldn't be wrong. It is said that Mr. Nongzhu of the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea has a female disciple named Ze, and she likes to wear purple clothes. I think he is talking about you. You know my master." Ze couldn't help but ask when she saw that he was speaking logically. However, this was also equivalent to telling everyone about her background. So it really is Miss Ze. Man Hu nodded and said with a smile, "Miss Ze has never asked about secular affairs. Why are you here? Is it possible that Mr. Nongzhu is also here? If he is really here, I hope you can introduce us to him. The 7 of us have heard of your name for a long time, and we look forward to meeting you." As he said this, he subconsciously looked around, and the other 6 people did the same. All the sects muttered to themselves, "Who is this Mr. Nongju? These 7 people seem to be afraid of him. What kind of person can make 7 experts at the late stage of the crossing calamity stage afraid of him?" "He didn't come," Ze replied coldly. At first, she was a little worried that she had hit her master's friend, but now that she knew that these 7 people didn't know her master, and only heard of him, her face became cold again. Hearing this, Man-Hu and the others seemed to be relieved. Chapter 374. Tut tut. It seemed that the handsome Nongju was quite famous in the soul-forming stage. Yu Qianqiu looked at their reactions and fell into deep thought. Man-Hu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a flicker in his eyes. He was afraid that it was not easy to make Nongju's disciple obey him. After thinking for a while, he took out another storage bag from his storage bag and handed it to Yu Qianqiu. He said, "My junior brother was reckless and destroyed the venue of the competition. Here are 10 million upper spiritual stones as compensation. I think you can let us participate in this saber drawing competition." Yu Qianqiu took the storage bag and used his divine sense to make a rough estimate. The number should be right. But it was a little difficult. Let them participate. The people of other sects might have objections and not let them participate. But he didn't want to return the 10 million upper spiritual stones to them. Alas! It was really a dilemma. Just as he was hesitating, Ze suddenly said, "You can only participate if you pay 10 million upper spiritual stones. If you don't have spiritual stones, you can leave." Her words were very rude, very powerful, and very straightforward. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu was so surprised that he almost couldn't close his mouth. He was ecstatic. When did this stubborn girl become so smart? She cooperated so well. In fact, this was all his own masterpiece. He had educated a simple woman who had never seen the world to think about money. He didn't know how Nongju would react if she knew. All the sects looked at each other. The deterrent force of Ze's action was still there, so no one stood up to object for the time being. Man-Hu was stunned. He really took out a bag of spiritual stones from his storage bag and handed it over. Ze took it and carefully confirmed the number. Then she nodded to Yu Qianqiu and gave it to him. Yu Qianqiu embarrassedly put the spiritual stones into his storage bag in front of everyone. He smiled awkwardly at Ze and said, "Since you said it's okay, let's continue the saber drawing competition." He looked at the crowd with a little guilty conscience. The people from the 4 great clans were speechless. They had casually told a lie and earned another 10 million. This kind of money was a little too easy. However, the people from the 4 great clans naturally wouldn't ruin his show, and all of them flashed back. Supporting Xian Island's Osihai shook his head and sighed as he looked at Yu Qianqiu. He was such a good disciple in supporting Xian Island. How did it become like this? It seemed that it was really hard for a rogue cultivator to live in the cultivation world. Maybe he was afraid of being poor. Not to mention that he even took out such a treasure, he had almost reached the point where he couldn't move at the sight of money. Sigh. Osihai sighed and said, "Go back." More than a dozen people from supporting Immortal Island returned to their positions. With Fu Xian Island taking the lead, the other sects could only reluctantly retreat. The place became empty again. Yu Qianqiu, we just handed over the spiritual stones, but we haven't started yet. How are we going to calculate it? Qiu Weiyuan shouted angrily. He and Dongfang Chang Ao hadn't entered the stage yet. Again. I, Yu Qianqiu, have always been fair. Seniors, let's start the time again. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly gestured to Wu Liqing to get ready. He turned back and smiled at Yan Zhuixing and the others. Brother Yen, please do as you please. After the two seniors finish this round, you can just send one person to the stage. With another 20 million, Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything else. He turned around and ran back to the stage. The two girls followed him. Yan Zhuixing looked at Wu Lishue's back with a complicated gaze. He turned around and led the 7 people to the entrance. There were already a lot of rogue cultivators at the entrance. They all looked at them with disgust. Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu turned a blind eye to them, but Man Hu's junior brothers were so angry that they gritted their teeth. Even though they were at the late stage of passing tribulation, they didn't have a seat here. If they were arrogant before, it wouldn't be a big deal. But now that they lost to ZE, it was suspicious that they were chased here. They were all masters at the late stage of passing tribulation, so it was hard for them to swallow their anger. Someone immediately transmitted his voice to Man Hu. Eldest senior brother, that Nongzhu is only at the mid-stage of spirit severing. Our master is at the late stage of spirit severing. Besides, this woman is only good at movement. If we really fight, we might be able to defeat her. Big senior brother, we came out this time to humiliate the Chinese cultivation world. Why are you so polite to her and humiliate us? Man Hu looked back at the tall and skinny man and transmitted his voice to him. Second brother, I'm not afraid of her. Her master, Nongzhu, is a good friend of Bai Changchun. In the whole cultivation world, only Nongzhu hasn't taken an oath. Among the spirit-severing cultivators, only Nongzhu can enter the Chinese cultivation world at any time to disturb us. Master once told me that Nongzhu is used to being lazy and doesn't like to meddle. Besides, he won't make a move because of the other spirit-severing cultivators. Master told us that if we meet him, we should try to be patient and not give him an excuse to make a move. Otherwise, we won't be able to defeat him no matter how many people we have. ZE is his disciple. If we hurt his disciple, I'm afraid he will have a reason to make a move. That's easy. Master will kill Nongzhu himself. The tall and skinny man said disdainfully. You should know that two masters together are not Bai Changchun's match. Barbarian Tiger's words made the tall and thin man suddenly become silent. Although there was a big hole in the middle of the field, it didn't seem to affect the participants. Yu Qianqiu was also relieved. The two knives were stuck in the ground. After the accident, they weren't afraid that someone would steal them away. As soon as the timer started, Dongfang Chang, Ao and Qiu Wuyuan used their earth energy to protect themselves. Immediately, everyone put aside the previous incident and focused their attention on the two of them. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows. Under the telepathic connection, the two knives had already started to release their power before the two of them got close. Wang. The two knives seemed to have sensed that someone had ill intentions towards them. They made two sounds again. Dongfang Chang, Ao and Qiu Wuyuan, who were closer, immediately felt a piercing chill in their hearts. What followed was a heart-palpitating aura of death. It was dense and oppressive, making them unable to resist and unable to get rid of it. The two of them were shocked. Only then did they realize that their earth energy protection couldn't withstand it. Yan Zhuixing, who was standing at the gate, was paying attention to the field. Just as the two knives made a sound, his pupils suddenly shrank. His eyes turned blood red in an instant and then disappeared. Everyone's attention was focused on the field. No one noticed the abnormality in his eyes. Yan Zhuixing inadvertently discovered that the two blades actually glowed with an indistinct shadow. Like a wisp of smoke, it curled up and spread out, enveloping a radius of nearly 10 meters. It didn't disperse for a long time, and just happened to include Dongfang Changgao and Qiu Wuyuan within it. What surprised him the most was that he could feel an endless aura of death in the smoke-like shadow with just his eyes. After his demonic body was formed, although he hadn't officially cultivated the great skills in the demonic book, his demonic eye had already formed along with his demonic body. The smoke-like shadow seemed to be his demonic eye's archenemy. The moment it appeared, it stimulated his demonic eye and caused it to show itself. Then, he forcefully suppressed it. Yan Zhuixing didn't understand why this happened. He squinted his eyes slightly. Dongfang Chang, Ao and Qiu Weiyuan didn't dare to hesitate. Otherwise, if the time was up, they would have given another 10 million to Yu Qianqiu for nothing. The two of them looked at each other. Almost at the same time, they suppressed the spherical earth energy protection on their bodies. It was as if they were wearing a glowing coat. In a flash, they appeared in front of the knives. With their strong willpower, they bit their tongues to resist the dizziness that would hit their nerves. 5 claws shrouded in earth energy reached out and grabbed the handle of the knives. The people from supporting Immortals Island and the 10,000 demons couldn't sit still anymore. One by one, they stood up and excitedly hoped that the two of them would succeed. The two of them actually wanted to use their speed to quickly pull the knives out. Naturally, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't let them do as they wished. Otherwise, if the knives were gone, where would he get the knives from? Moreover, once the knives were taken away, it would be too far away and out of his control. He would be exposed immediately. He was afraid that the person who got the knives would immediately be killed by the sudden appearance of the black fire. At that time, if his swindling business was exposed, it would be really inconvenient for him to come out and meet people. Just as the two of them stretched out their claws, a thick black mist emerged from the blade with a whoosh. The protective vigor chi on their bodies immediately made a sizzling sound, almost directly breaking through their protective vigor chi. The two of them were shocked. At a glance, they could tell that this black fog was the same as the black demon that corroded Luo Qingtian's arm. Once it touched their bodies, it would be terrible. Frightened, they quickly retreated. The black fog curled up and spread in the air. The two knives became calm again, but everyone's eyes were focused on them. Many people from supporting Immortals Island and the 10,000 demons sighed. They were so close to success, but they failed at the last moment. It was really a pity. Eldest senior brother, this knife can actually attack people on its own. This is impossible even for an ordinary spiritual treasure. Could it be that this knife is a high-grade spiritual treasure? The tall and thin man behind Man Who was shocked. It's very possible. Didn't they say that this item came from the Eastern Holy Land? Man Who said solemnly. The few of them suddenly became excited. Some people behind them suddenly snorted. The few of them just looked back coldly and didn't say anything. Their master was an expert in the late stage of the soul formation realm. He also had a few spiritual treasures, including a middle-grade one. The few of them had seen it before, but they had never seen a spiritual treasure that could attack automatically. They naturally put this item in the category of high-grade spiritual treasures. I didn't expect it. Eldest senior brother, we must find a way to get this treasure and offer it to Master. Old Seven, who was beaten by Purple Dress, said excitedly. This knife is strange. Yan Zhuixing turned around and pointed at his eyes. The few of them understood that he already had the devil eye and could see things that others couldn't. However, Yan Zhuixing's cultivation wasn't at the stage where he could use voice transmission, so it wasn't convenient for him to ask in detail. Man Who nodded solemnly and said, spiritual treasures naturally have their own peculiarities. Otherwise, they wouldn't be called spiritual treasures. Then he asked the few junior brothers, it seems that they won't be able to get this treasure. It's our turn to send people. Who's going? Chapter 375. I'll go, the lanky second brother said. Be careful. If you can't do it, come back. Don't force it. Man Who nodded and instructed. In the field, Dongfang Chang, Ao and Chiu Wuyuan had already retracted their aura shield. Although the time was not up yet, the two of them felt that there was nothing they could do. If they forced themselves to draw the saber, they might even lose their lives. Each of them sighed and returned to their own tents in their own sections. On the stage, Yu Qianqiu was trustworthy. He held the gong of alarm and stared at the hourglass below until it was completely empty. Only then did he ring the bell to announce the end of the competition. On the other side, the lanky second brother had already slowly entered the field. Yu Qianqiu asked loudly, "This round is short of one person. Who wants to go?" He asked several times, but no one answered. From everyone's expression, it was obvious that no one wanted to go with Yan Zhuixing's people. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt a little depressed. However, he had no way to force others to go, so he could only announce the start of the competition. The second brother looked around with a trace of disdain on his face. However, he was immediately shocked by the bone-piercing chill coming from the saber. He did not dare to underestimate it and also released his aura shield. However, the aura shield could not stop the aura of death. The second brother immediately felt himself entangled in endless despair. His spirit became illusory, and he wanted to give up this meaningless resistance. His whole body was also swaying. Not good. There's something wrong with the second brother. The senior and junior brothers were shocked. Second brother. Man who saw that the situation was not right. He immediately shouted, like a bolt from the blue. The second brother, who was immersed in the illusion, trembled and woke up. He thought, that was close. I was too careless. He steeled his mind and immediately walked toward the saber. With his cultivation, he was naturally much stronger than Dongfang Chang, Ao and Chiu Wuyuan in resisting the pressure coming from the saber. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu, who was on the stage, shouted, "The rules of the sword drawing competition have already been posted outside. Outsiders are not allowed to help in the sword drawing competition. If anyone dares to interfere, they will be declared a failure in accordance with the rules." Man who immediately cupped his hands and apologized, I'm sorry, I came in a hurry and didn't have time to look carefully, please forgive me." Then he turned around and shouted, "Old Seven, go and find the rules of the convention posted outside." Since they were able to come here, they were naturally aware of the rules of the competition. But it was a pity that the second brother had been too careless earlier, and as the eldest senior brother, man who naturally couldn't help but remind him. Old Seven understood that eldest senior brother was looking for an excuse to step down, but when he turned around, he found that no one behind him made way for him, so he could only teleport out. Second brother also heard these words. He knew that eldest senior brother had lost face in front of so many people because of him. His heart was filled with gratitude, and he hardened his heart to pull the knife back. But as soon as he approached the knife, he also encountered the black demon that Dongfang Chang, Ao and Chiu Wuyuan had encountered before. The transparent protective aura shield flickered under the erosion of the black demon. Second brother was shocked. He didn't expect the black demon to be so powerful. No wonder the two people before retreated as soon as they encountered it. Man Hu and the others naturally saw that this was a sign of rapid consumption of Jinqi, and their hearts were in their throats. But this time, Man Hu learned his lesson and no longer shouted loudly. Instead, he transmitted his voice, "Second brother, if you can't do it, come back, don't force yourself." Second brother silently shook his head. He had made up his mind to pull out the knife. The experienced people of the various sects also saw that someone might be transmitting his voice to remind him of something. But this was a matter without evidence, and they couldn't say anything if they couldn't find any evidence. Relying on the profound cultivation of the final stage of the crossing tribulation, second brother's protective aura shield almost condensed into a solid form. It was as if he was wearing a glowing glove, and he unexpectedly grabbed the handle of the knife against the black demon. Yu Qianqiu's pupils shrank slightly, but he found that someone was staring at him instead of pulling out the knife. When he met that person's gaze, he saw that it was Yan Juexing who was staring at him. Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded, but he snorted coldly in his heart. Wanting to pull out the knife like this is too easy. You're forcing me to kill you. Seeing that the knife was about to be pulled out by second brother, the faces of the various sects changed. If this was really the case, then the Chinese cultivation world would lose a lot of face. Although the other party's cultivation was at the final stage of the crossing tribulation, so many people couldn't fight against one person. Moreover, this was in their own territory. Wouldn't it be shameful? Especially the people of Fuxian Island and the 10,000 demons, the leaders of the righteous and demonic sections. Their expressions were even more unsightly. They all regretted that they didn't let the consecrators of their sects personally take action. Just as second brother grabbed the knife handle, a raging black flame suddenly appeared on the body of the knife. In an instant, his entire body was wrapped inside, and the protective aura shield on his body was easily destroyed in an instant. Second brother, come back. Man Hu and the others no longer cared about the rules and shouted in alarm. Ah! Almost at the same time as they shouted, second brother had already flashed out of the black flame with a teleportation, but he still held his head and let out a mournful scream. For a cultivator at the final stage of the crossing tribulation to let out such a miserable scream, one could imagine the pain he was suffering. The people of the various sects all shivered in fear. Although second brother had flashed out of the black flame, he was like a piece of burning wood. The black flame stuck to his body and burned, and he couldn't get rid of it at all. Man Hu and the others flashed over, but they immediately didn't dare to get close to the terrifying power of the black flame. They could only shout and scream from afar, as if they had gone crazy. The eyes of the senior and junior brothers were bloodshot as they watched second brother's skin and flesh disappear in the blink of an eye, turning into a skeleton. The skeleton swayed, and in the end, even the skeleton collapsed and scattered on the ground. The black flame gradually died out, and a gust of wind blew past, and the scattered bones on the ground immediately withered and turned into flying ashes. The senior and junior brothers were dumbfounded as they looked at second brother's disappearing body. The people of the various sects were dumbfounded as they looked at the two knives. With such power, who could pull them out? Especially Dongfang Cheng, Ao and Qiu Wuyuan, the two of them were extremely glad that they had retreated when they saw Black Fiend. If they had really grabbed the knife handle and activated the black flame, they were afraid that they would end up like this person in front of them. The two of them looked at each other silently across the stage. It's over. When Yu Qianqiu saw everyone's expression, he suddenly came to a realization and sighed in his heart. With such a commotion, who would dare to pull out the knives? No one would spend money to throw away their lives. The raging black flame on the knives gradually subsided, and they silently stood there as calm as before. But at this moment, everyone could only use two words to describe these two knives: peerless murder weapons. Man Hu and his junior brothers were now left with 6 people, and they didn't even have the chance to collect second brother's corpse. 6 ferociously stared at Yu Qianqiu on the stage. The atmosphere was not good. Although in everyone's eyes, Yu Qianqiu's character wasn't very good, he had just killed a foreign tribulation passing realm expert, and gained face for the Chinese cultivation world. At this moment, everyone stood up with a hua sound, and coldly stared at Man Hu and the others, supporting Yu Qianqiu. The 6 clan elders of the 4 great clans also brazenly appeared on the stage, and stood on either side of Yu Qianqiu. Man Hu glanced at the 6 elders, and found that they were all at the late tribulation passing realm. His eyes flickered. It wasn't that Man Hu was afraid of the 6 of them, but because of Zi, who was standing beside Yu Qianqiu, he had some misgivings. Otherwise, with their cultivation, they would have dared to cause trouble wherever they went. Wu Sihai was speechless. Wherever this brat went, something would happen. They couldn't even guard against him, he was a jinx. Yu Qianzhou cupped his hands towards Man Hu and the others, and said, I deeply sympathize with what happened to my fellow disciples, but the saber drawing assembly has a rule. If any accidents occur, I will not be responsible. After saying that, he looked around and said, the next round will continue, that person who is interested can come up and pay spirit stones. Again. Who will come? It's more like courting death. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yu Qianzhou. They didn't expect him to be greedy to this extent. In fact, Yu Qianzhou didn't have any hope, he was just saying it. What if there were people who wanted treasures more than their lives? Now that he had only obtained 60 million, he was a bit unwilling. Saying what if, there really was what if. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing slowly stepped forward and said, let me try. As he said that, he threw a storage pouch onto the stage. Yu Qianzhou caught the storage pouch and was stunned. Everyone looked at Yan Zhuixing. At this moment, everyone realized that Yan Zhuixing, who was originally at the core formation stage, was now at the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. It had only been a few short years. However, a mocking expression appeared in everyone's eyes. Even someone at the late stage of the passing tribulation couldn't withstand it, wasn't a nascent soul stage courting death. Man Hu stepped forward and stopped him, and said solemnly, Young Hall Master, we appreciate your kind intentions, but please don't be impulsive. He thought that Yan Zhuixing couldn't swallow his anger because of his second brother's death. However, he didn't know that ever since Yan Zhuixing's demonic eyes were stimulated by the two sabers, he had a strong obsession in his heart. He wanted to compete with the two sabers, and the aura of death that made everyone's heart palpitate made him unable to suppress his passion. Yan Zhuixing said to Man Hu, State Preceptor, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Man Hu and the others looked at each other. They didn't know where Yan Zhuixing's confidence came from, but they also knew that Yan Zhuixing had a strong sense of autonomy. Once he decided on something, no one could change his mind. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to form the demonic body. F***CK. My enemy. I can't wait for it. This is a good opportunity to kill you, so that there won't be any trouble in the future. Yu Qianzhou didn't even look at the contents of the storage pouch and directly stuffed it into his own storage pouch. He waved at Wu Liqing below and said, Begin, begin. He was anxious to kill Yan Zhuixing. He could ignore the enmity between the two of them, but Yan Zhuixing wouldn't. Yan Zhuixing looked around, and his eyes met with Yu Qianzhou again. The latter smiled and made a please gesture to him. Yan Zhuixing nodded, and no expression could be seen on his face. He directly walked towards one of the sabers. Before he got close, a bone-piercing chill suddenly attacked him. Yan Zhuixing stopped, closed his eyes, and opened his arms to welcome the aura of death that followed closely: indifference, ruthlessness, sternness, despair, and a series of extremely negative auras mixed together to form the aura of death. Yan Zhuixing slowly opened his eyes, and turned to look at Yu Qianzhou. There was actually a smile on his face. However, Yu Qianzhou's expression changed. He could feel that the pressure released by the black fire not only had no effect on Yan Zhuixing, but it was all absorbed by Yan Zhuixing's body. Chapter 376. Those who had not personally experienced it might not know how powerful it was, but Dongfang Chang, Ao and Qiu Weiyuan were shocked. Even with their cultivation, it was difficult for them to withstand such pressure, but Yan Zhuixing seemed to be completely fine. Although they had not personally experienced it, they also felt that something was wrong. Only now did Yan Zhuixing understand that his devil body could actually restrain the death aura emitted from the blade. After absorbing it into his body, his devil body showed faint signs of strengthening, which really surprised him. No wonder he had the urge to try it out. It seemed that these two blades were very suitable for him. Yan Zhuixing's gaze lingered on the two blades. Suddenly, he remembered that he had limited time and could not delay any longer, otherwise, he would be cheated of spirit stones by that guy again. He walked to the front of the blades with ease. Just as he stretched out his hand, the black aura suddenly erupted from the blade, instantly submerging it in thick black smoke. There were no screams as everyone had imagined. Many people, including Yu Qianqiu, were a little disappointed. Surprisingly, the black aura that was as dense as a thick cloud gradually faded. When it faded a little more, the group of people were stunned when they saw the situation inside. They saw that Yan Zhuixing seemed to be enjoying it very much, like a whale drinking water, absorbing the black aura in big mouthfuls. Man Hu and the others also looked at each other. They knew that Yan Zhuixing had already formed the devil body, but they did not expect the devil body to have such power. In the future, if he really succeeded in cultivating the great technique of the devil book, how terrifying would that be? Yu Qianqiu felt a toothache watching this. You actually used my black aura as oxygen, damn. You have guts. Yan Zhuixing was so comfortable that he almost moaned. The black aura was more beneficial to the devil body than the death aura. He closed his eyes and was enjoying it, when he suddenly had a premonition that a terrible power was about to be released from the blade. Before he could react, there seemed to be some kind of power bursting out of his body. Yan Zhuixing believed that his devil body would not harm him, so he let it freely release. Before Yan Zhuixing could touch the blade, the surging black fire instantly erupted from the blade, and at that moment, a circle of black light appeared around Yan Zhuixing's body at the same time. The black fire that showed unparalleled power just now was actually unable to break through the black light. When the group saw this, they all gasped in disbelief. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched even more. He did not expect Black Flame to have a nemesis, and the person who could restrain Black Flame was actually his enemy. What the hell? The black fire trapped the black light, while the black light protected Yan Zhuixing. The black fire and the black light neutralized each other. Just as they suppressed each other, they bounced up again. Yan Zhuixing, on the other hand, stood there with a cold face. His whole person looked evil and awe-inspiring. He glanced at the audience indifferently, as if the suppression of the black fire and black light had nothing to do with him. Anyone who came into contact with his eyes would subconsciously shiver in their hearts. No emotion could be seen in those eyes, and they were icy cold and indifferent to the extreme. It was as if he viewed all living beings as ants. That pair of cold eyes finally met with Yu Qianqiu's eyes. Yu Qianqiu's heart was pounding, but he still maintained a friendly smile on his face. Maybe Yu Qianqiu's smile moved Yan Zhuixing, but it was not the time to draw the blade yet. Yan Zhuixing silently turned around and walked out of the black fire. The evil and awe-inspiring black light also gradually retracted into his body. Oh my god! Is that still a human's gaze? After Yu Qianqiu got rid of Yan Zhuixing's gaze, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He thought to himself, this guy's evil aura is too heavy to actually be able to restrain my trump card. It seems like it's better not to provoke him for now. The people from the other sects were a little shocked. Yan Zhuixing was clearly fine, so why did he not want the treasure blade that was within his reach? Even Man Hu and the rest felt that it was a little strange. They looked at Yan Zhuixing, who was walking back, with a questioning gaze. The latter said indifferently, let's go back. Go back now. Wouldn't second senior brother's death be in vain? Old Seventh's gaze was still fixed on the blade. Yan Zhuixing shook his head slightly at Man Hu. Man Hu did not say much and shouted to the few people, listen to young Palace Lord, go back. As he spoke, he immediately released his flying artifact. After the few people jumped on it, they soared into the sky. Just like that, not only did one person die, but they also lost 30 million upper-grade spirit stones. They came and left in a hurry, causing the people from the other sects to be a little puzzled. Sigh. This business probably wouldn't be able to continue. Yu Qianqiu looked around the stage and shouted, "Is there anyone else trying?" After shouting a few times, there was no response, so he added, "After 2 hours, if there is no one else trying, I will personally take back the 2 blades and end this saber drawing conference." This was the last trace of hope that he was holding on to. Even Ze was looking around, hoping that someone would come out and pay. However, before 2 hours were up, the sects started to leave. With one sect taking the lead, the other sects also left one after another. There was no other way. Although the blades were good, they could not take them away. Many of the people who originally wanted to take advantage of Yu Qianqiu being alone to snatch the saber gave up on this idea. This saber could actively attack people. Even if they killed Yu Qianqiu, they still wouldn't be able to take the saber away. Almost all the sects had left. Only Fuxian Island, 10,000 Demons, and Moon Clan, which were closer to the front, did not leave. Yu Qianqiu swore some vulgarities that others could not hear clearly. He tore off the big red flower and the red cloth on his body. After seeing the 3 sects, he was slightly stunned. Fuxian Island and 10,000 Demons still had a reason to stay. What were the women from Moon Clan doing here? Did they admire me so much? Earning 70 million in a day was also worth admiring. *T. He jumped off the stage and took back the 2 blades that he used to trick people. He called Ze and Wu Lixua and left. The Wu clan would naturally arrange for people to clean up the mess. Yu Qianqiu. 2 old men's voices and a woman's voice called out at the same time. Were they really looking for me? Yu Qianqiu stopped and turned around. He asked confusedly, "Seniors, why are you looking for me?" Needless to say, Dongfang Chang, Ao and Qiu Weiyuan were acquaintances. The woman from Moon Clan was called Hua Rui. Although he was not familiar with her, he knew her. When he went to the demon region to train, she was the leader of Moon Clan. After the 3 shouted, they looked at each other. Dongfang Chang, Ao and Qiu Weiyuan had been entangled for many years. They could almost read each other's minds. They knew what each other wanted to do with just one look. The 2 old men looked at Hua Rui suspiciously. They really could not figure out what she wanted to do. The 3 first cupped their hands at the people from the 4 clans on the stage. Then, they led their disciples and walked toward Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu and Wu Lixua greeted them. Ze, on the other hand, stood there without moving. Indeed, with her cultivation and background, she did not need these people at all. The people from the 3 clans surrounded the 3 of them, but they did not say anything. Yu Qianqiu looked left and right. He did not understand what the 3 of them wanted. He thought to himself, are they going to let me do something because I made some money? With the wealth of these 3 clans, they did not need to collect protection fees. In the end, it was Qiu Weiyuan who said cheerfully, "Brother Yu, I would like to invite you to 10,000 Demons as a guest. Would you like to do me the honor?" "Ha! Senior Qiu, you are too polite." Yu Qianqiu replied, but he immediately thought of what Qiu Weiyuan said about buying a knife. It probably had something to do with this. Just as he did not know how to reject, he suddenly saw Hua Rui staring at Ze. He quickly took the opportunity to ask Qiu Weiyuan, "Senior Hua, do you know Ze?" Qiu Weiyuan's face twitched and he cursed the little fox in his heart. Hua Rui came back to her senses and smiled. "No, I don't." Her eyes were still staring at Ze from time to time. "Senior Hua, why are you looking for me?" Yu Qianqiu was confused. Nothing. As soon as Hua Rui said that, she stunned herself. Why did she stop him for no reason? She immediately changed her words and said, "Nothing important. On behalf of the Moon Clan, I would like to invite you to visit the Moon Clan." As soon as she said that, Dongfang Chang, Ao and Chiu Yuan were both stunned. The Moon Clan was made up of women and they never invited men casually. Even if they did invite men occasionally, they would only invite people of high moral standing in the cultivation world. Why would they invite someone with bad character like Yu Qianqiu? The two of them looked at each other and thought to themselves, something's wrong. Yu Qianqiu naturally would not suspect that he was a bad person. However, he had also heard that the Moon Clan was not a place where men could go casually. He was stunned and said, Yu Qianqiu would not dare to reject Senior Hua's invitation. However, Yu Qianqiu is a man. It might be inconvenient for me to go. Bring your female companion with you. Of course, there won't be a problem. Hua Rui smiled and pointed at Ziyi. Dongfang Chang, Ao and Chiu Yuan were suddenly enlightened. It turned out that the person the Moon Clan invited wasn't Yu Qianqiu, but this mysterious woman. However, they were not familiar with this woman, so they used Yu Qianqiu as an excuse. Yu Qianqiu understood what she meant. It seemed that she was targeting Ziyi. He couldn't help but look at Ziyi a few more times. However, Ziyi stared at Hua Rui and said, we can go. How many spiritual stones can you take out? Everyone instantly fell silent. Very quiet, Yu Qianqiu's face twitched again and again. This girl is even more shameless than me. Someone invited you as a guest and you want them to pay. This logic was unprecedented. He was also struck speechless by the lightning. How many spiritual stones do you need? Hua Rui asked with a stiff face. Is 20 million enough? Ziyi asked Yu Qianqiu. Ah! Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth wide. He felt a little dazed and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sister. Even if you want to get money, you have to look at the occasion. Even if you want to embarrass yourself, you don't have to do it like this. Even if you want to, don't do it now. He didn't speak and Ziyi thought he agreed. She turned around and said, 20 million. She didn't forget to add to Hua Rui, 20 million top-grade spiritual stones. Yu Qianqiu couldn't afford to be embarrassed. He was afraid that she would say something else. He hurriedly bowed to Dongfang Chang, Ao and said, Senior Dongfang, why are you looking for me? Dongfang Chang, Ao, who was staring at Ziyi in a daze, came back to his senses. His expression became solemn again. He said, Yu Qianqiu, follow me back to supporting Xian Island. I have something to discuss with you. Yu Qianqiu had a faint smile on his face. I'm no longer a disciple of supporting Xian Island. Why are you still talking to me like this? It's as if I have to go. He immediately shook his head and said, let's discuss it here. There's no need to go to supporting Xian Island. Yu Qianqiu, what's wrong with supporting Xian Island? Why are you avoiding it like this? Oh, Sihai came out from behind and shouted. Logically speaking, Dongfang Chang, Ao was still under his control. However, when it came to handling outside matters, Dongfang Chang, Ao was better at it. Therefore, he didn't say anything. But now, he couldn't help it because he was one of the people who wanted to recall Yu Qianqiu back to supporting Xian Island. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and didn't say anything. Oh, Sihai snorted coldly, waved his hand, and walked away. Dongfang Chang, Ao frowned and said, Yu Qianqiu, Aunt Jiu asked me to find you. She wants you to go back to supporting Xian Island. Are you going? Yu Qianqiu still shook his head and said, Senior Dongfang, please send my regards to Aunt Jiu. If there's a chance, I'll definitely pay her a visit. Dongfang Chang, Ao let out a deep breath and said, Aunt Jiu asked me to ask you if you still remember a promise you made in the past. If you remember, you have to go back to supporting Xian Island. Aunt Jiu wants you to fulfill your promise. Chapter 377. The flying artifact broke through the sky and flew towards the East Sea. Only 7 of the 8 people were left. Their faces were gloomy and looked out of place with the white clouds outside. "Big brother, those people are still following us. Let me go and kill them." Old 7 looked at the 3 flying artifacts and said angrily. When they came from the East Sea, the people from the Cultivation Alliance immediately followed them. Now that they returned, they were still following them. It seemed that they would not stop monitoring them until they returned to the East Sea. Now is not the time to provoke conflict. The cultivators of the various countries are gathering people. After a large number of people arrive, we will settle the score with them. Second brother's death must be avenged. Man whose face was pale. He was gritting his teeth when he suddenly found that Yan Juexing was on the verge of falling. It seemed that he could not stand stably. He immediately supported him and asked, "Young palace master, are you injured?" They looked at him in surprise. Was the calmness from before just an act? Yan Juexing looked back at the flying artifact that was following them from afar. Just as he turned his head, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale. What made Man Hu and the others shocked was that when the blood Yan Juexing spat out fell on the bottom of the flying artifact, it actually emitted black smoke and quickly dried up into a scab. "Were you injured by the saber?" Man Hu asked. "My demonic body seems to be able to restrain that saber. However, my demonic body has just formed and is not stable yet. When I was defending, I was accidentally invaded by the fire poison. Fortunately, the demonic body suppressed the fire poison and did not spread." Yan Juexing's face was pale as he said, "After going back, I will speed up the cultivation of the demonic book. I must get those 2 sabers." After half a day, they successfully returned to the Everlasting Island. Yan Juexing did not say much and directly flew into the depths of the mountains on the island. The senior and junior brothers looked at each other in the sky. They knew that he went to cultivate the demonic technique. Man Hu and the others thought of the shocking technique in the demonic book and felt a chill in their hearts. Old Third, who had been silent all this time, asked, "Big brother, this demonic book is a treasure that Master has kept for many years. Why did you say that you accidentally found it in the inner palace? Also, although Master told us to look for people who can build a devil body, why did you give that devil book to him to cultivate? If Master investigates this matter, I'm afraid." Man Hu looked at his junior brothers and revealed a satisfied smile. These junior brothers clearly knew that what he did was inappropriate, but they didn't say anything. This trust was very precious. But thinking of the dead second brother, Man Hu said with some sadness, "Third brother, Master treated us like his own father. How could I do such a thing behind Master's back?" Sigh. When Master found out that Yan Juexing had formed the devil body, he was so happy that he almost came to China in person. However, he was bound by the poison oath, so he had no choice but to accept my will and pass the devil's book to Yan Juexing, and let us listen to Yan Juexing's commands. The others were speechless. Although they didn't say it out loud, their expressions were filled with doubt. "There are some things that you guys don't know. However, now that Yan Juexing has formed his demonic body, it's time for me to tell you guys." Man Hu looked at his junior brothers and slowly said, "The ancient devil path is true, and the passage to the devil world is also true. This is because the devil path was too powerful in the past, even the immortal and netherworld had to bow down to them. Who would have thought that such a powerful devil path would be provoked by the immortal and netherworld? As for what happened, even Master doesn't know. In short, the passage to the devil world was sealed by the immortal and netherworld. But the devil monarch of the devil world was also not an ordinary person. After discovering that something was wrong, when the passage was about to be sealed, he forcefully used a great technique to capture a devil path pawn and send him out. The poem that was sent out had the Devil's Book bestowed by the Devil Monarch. The others looked at each other in dismay. Third brother frowned and said, "Eldest brother, did Master tell you this? Why didn't Master tell us?" Third brother, listen to me slowly, you will naturally understand after listening. Man who continued, since the immortal and netherworld dared to do this, they naturally wouldn't let the people of the devil world have the opportunity to open the passage from the inside. The devil path pawn carried the devil's book and was entrusted by the devil monarch to look for people in the mortal world who could successfully cultivate the devil's book. Once someone could successfully cultivate the devil's book, they would naturally be able to find the sealed passage to the devil world. With the power of the devil's book, there would definitely be an opportunity to open the passage from the outside. Since that is the case, why didn't the devil path pawn cultivate the devil's book himself, but instead looked for people to cultivate it? Fourth brother was puzzled. If you want to cultivate the devil's book, you must first build the devil's body. Man who sighed, at that time, the situation was urgent, and the devil monarch didn't have time to choose a more suitable candidate. He had no choice but to send the devil's path pawn. But the devil's path pawn's talent was limited, and he was unable to build the devil's body, so how could he cultivate the devil's book? After the immortal and netherworld joined hands to seal the passage, they wantonly slaughtered the remaining devil path people in the mortal world. And at that time, without the support of the devil world, how could the devil's path people be a match for the immortal and netherworld? Almost all of them were killed, and from then on, the devil's path became extinct. That devil's path pawn, who was entrusted with the heavy responsibility, endured humiliation and went through untold hardships to survive. After the immortal and netherworld stopped paying attention to the mortal world, he quietly looked for people who could build the devil's body and cultivate the devil's book. Seventh brother, who was a bit hot-tempered, was stunned. Then how did the devil's book fall into the hands of Master? Seventh brother didn't understand, but the others thoughtfully looked at each other and seemed to have understood something. Man who looked at them and explained with a smile, that devil's path pawn's cultivation hasn't reached the stage of immortality, and it's also impossible for him to live from ancient times until now. He was entrusted with the heavy responsibility of the Devil King, so he naturally had to find someone to succeed him. Before he died, he found a successor, and at the price of never being able to reincarnate and having his soul scattered, he used the Devil's Curse of the Devil's Path secret technique on the successor. If the successor doesn't fulfill his last wish, he must find a suitable successor to continue, otherwise, he will face the punishment of the Devil's Curse, and at that time, he will neither live nor die. And that Devil's Curse will also be passed down from generation to generation. Seventh brother was stunned. He wasn't a fool and roughly understood what was going on. He couldn't help but ask, "Eldest senior brother, do you mean that Master is the successor of this generation who has been entrusted with a heavy responsibility? Then wouldn't Master also have that devil's curse planted on him?" "That's right." Man who solemnly said, "I have already promised to inherit Master's heavy responsibility. If Master is gone, the devil's curse will automatically descend on me." Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and they all looked at their eldest senior brother in a daze. Man who waved his hand and said with a smile, "However, this matter is really unexpected. At that time, I saw that Yan Zhuixing's will was firm, so I had the idea of letting him try to build a devil's body. I really didn't expect that, after countless years of failure, he would actually succeed. I have to say that it is a coincidence. Since it has been successful, then is the devil's curse on Master already broken?" Fifth brother asked. Man who shook his head with a wry smile, "How could it be so easy? There are only two ways to break the devil's curse. First, after the devil world's passage is opened, the devil's curse will naturally disappear. Second, after the devil book cultivator reaches the late devil king stage, he can use a great method to help the successor build a devil's body. Once the successor's devil's body is formed, the devil's curse will naturally disappear. Of course, when the Devil King uses a great method to help the successor build a devil's body, it is almost impossible to fail. Unlike when we use the 7-star blood-piercing great method, it is almost impossible to survive. In that case, Yan Zhuixing needs to smoothly cultivate to the late Devil King stage to be able to break the devil's curse on Master. Sixth brother asked. That's right. Therefore, Master wants us to listen to Yan Zhuixing's command. The purpose is to help him eliminate the interference and smoothly cultivate the devil book. Man Who Said suddenly looked at everyone inside. It's just that if it's like this, junior brothers will have to suffer. This matter originally has nothing to do with you. Eldest senior brother, please don't say that. Master and we are like father and son. It is our duty to serve Master. How can there be any grievances? Third brother stopped him. The others also said similar words. Man Who tightly pursed his lips, looked at his junior brothers and nodded with gratification. The third brother frowned and said, Eldest senior brother, there's a troublesome matter. If we want to avenge second senior brother, we naturally have to kill that Yu Qianqiu. However, Nongzhu's female disciple has always been by his side. Seeing how she listens to Yu Qianqiu's words, once we make a move, Nongzhu's disciple will definitely help. Although we are not afraid of her, if Nongzhu is involved, then it will be troublesome. Second brother, we can't die in vain. I will immediately send a message to Master. I believe that after Master knows of second brother's death, he will clear the obstacles for us to take revenge. Master will definitely personally go to the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest to negotiate with Nongzhu. Man Whose eyes flickered. After saying that, he flashed to the peak of a mountain, took out a piece of jade, found the direction, and muttered softly, in the distant Derong Empire, a snow-capped mountain towered into the clouds, the cold wind whistled under the gloomy clouds, and snowflakes fluttered in the air. There was not a trace of green, nor a trace of life. Above the gloomy clouds, on the peak of the snow-capped mountain, the sun was shining brightly. The mountain was covered with a layer of ice, and under the sunlight, the mountain was draped in 7 colors. In such a deserted place, there was an old man with white hair and beard sitting cross-legged on the ice peak, his body only wrapped in a thin snow-white robe. He was not afraid of the cold. Next to him, there was a snow-white python, curled up into a ball and sleeping soundly. The strangest thing was that there was a pair of sparkling and translucent horns on the snake's head. If a knowledgeable person saw this, they would know that this was a rare spirit beast, Snow Flood Dragon. At this time, the old man who was sitting cross-legged like a sculpture suddenly opened his eyes. He was silent for a moment, then as if he had heard some unfortunate news, his eyes suddenly widened, his eyes flickered, and he suddenly stood up. A huge imposing aura surged out from his body. The sleeping Snow Flood Dragon quickly opened its eyes and raised its head, its bright red eyes blinking, revealing a frightened expression. Its coiled body brought along a white shadow, and like a divine dragon, it quickly drilled into the sea of clouds, disappearing without a trace. Ah! The old man suddenly let out a painful howl, and a majestic aura surged out like a gas. The entire mountain peak immediately felt as if a strong earthquake had occurred. The ice covering it collapsed with a loud rumble, and slid down the mountain. The thick gloomy clouds that floated over the mountainside, with the mountain peak as the center, stirred up undulating waves, and dispersed in all directions. The imposing aura was truly astonishing. The old man suddenly swung his arms, and his whole body rapidly broke through the sky, bringing with it a sharp whistle of friction with the air, and disappeared into the distant sky in the blink of an eye. Chapter 378. Fuxian Island, the place that Yu Qianqiu hadn't been to for a long time. When Dongfang Chang Hao said that Ma Jiugu wanted him to fulfill his promise, he knew that he had to come, and it was hard for him to refuse. He might feel that he didn't owe anyone from Fuxian Island, but Ma Jiugu was an exception. Back then, he couldn't bear the torment of time anymore, so he knelt down to Ma Jiugu in exchange for a starting point, but it also made him bear a promise that he had to repay. Yu Qianqiu didn't deny that he could go back on his word, but for a man like him, there was a difference. If he didn't return it, he wouldn't return it, but if he had to return it, he couldn't avoid it. What was the difference? Look at your conscience, there was no reason. Dongfang Chang Ao drove a flying artifact and brought Yu Qianqiu, Ze, and a group of people from Fuxian Island back. On the way, Sihai was still panting with anger, but Yu Qianqiu was too lazy to pay attention to him. This kind of guy was used to being flattered at home, and he lacked stimulation. Ze silently stayed by Yu Qianqiu's side. She discovered that Yu Qianqiu's expression was somewhat absent-minded. She didn't know what he was thinking about. This was the first time she had seen such a thing happen to Yu Qianqiu. Fuxian Island had already received the news in advance that Yu Qianqiu was coming back. No one knew who leaked the news, but some of the younger generation disciples immediately spread the news around the island. The expelled Yu Qianqiu is coming back. The Angquanceng Yu Qianqiu that even ancestor Qing Fu couldn't catch is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who saved the disciples of various sects in the demon ghost domain is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who defeated a competitor in the cultivation pavilion is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who created the Starflame fire technique is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who killed the grandson of sect master Angquanceng and the son of Daluo sect master is coming back. I heard that Daluo sect master Luo Qingtian was also defeated by Yu Qianqiu and lost an arm. Who doesn't know about this? The Saber Drawing Assembly this time is hosted by Yu Qianqiu. There were even a few female disciples hiding in their rooms discussing with stars in their eyes. The first girl exclaimed, "Really? Senior Yu Qianqiu who cultivates the Guiyuan sword technique is coming back. I don't know if I have the chance to come into contact with him. I've been cultivating the Guiyuan sword technique for such a long time, but I always feel that I can't unleash its power. I really want to ask him for some pointers." The second girl said with disdain, "I also want him to give me pointers. But he is no longer a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. Why should he give us pointers? I heard that he is a guest invited by supporting Immortal Island." The third girl said with regret, "Senior Yu Qianqiu is the person I admire the most. He didn't do anything wrong to supporting Immortal Island, so why did the sect expel him? Now, with his ability, he is still famous in the cultivation world without the support of the world's #1 sect." Ding Girl rubbed her chin and said, "You are not the only one who admires Senior Yu Qianqiu. Who in our supporting Immortal Island doesn't admire him?" Sigh. How many years does it take for such a person to appear in supporting Immortal Island? But he was chased away by the sect. I suspect that someone is jealous of his talent and is purposely making things difficult for him. Yes. The few girls nodded and agreed with what Ding Girl said. The higher-ups of supporting Immortal Island heard similar discussions from the young disciples everywhere they went. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These young people all remembered Yu Qianqiu's good points, but consciously didn't accept their idol shortcomings. It seemed that Yu Qianqiu's reputation as a scum of the cultivation world and a madman was very famous. Didn't they hear of it? However, it was understandable. Yu Qianqiu didn't look very old, but he had done many things that young people wanted to do but couldn't. Furthermore, any of the things he did could make the young people with dreams famous. What's more, he did so many things on one person. Actually, let alone the young people, how many of the older generation didn't secretly admire him? Otherwise, they wouldn't have called back Yu Qianqiu this time. If Yu Qianqiu heard these discussions, it was unknown what he would think. Presumably, he would also sigh. After so many years, he rarely stopped to rest and had always been bouncing around tirelessly. He actually did so many things and it could be said that his hard work wasn't in vain. Actually, he didn't only do these things in the open and in the dark. A man who didn't know tiredness could also do some things. When they arrived at supporting Immortal Island, Ze sized it up curiously. She had also heard of this world's #1 sect. Yu Qianqiu looked at the island below expressionlessly. The thick fog on the island opened up a path. The flying immortal treasure went through and directly flew to the square in front of Penglai Pavilion and landed. On the peak of the alchemy pavilion, Guan Weiwu threw off his image of an alchemy addict. He stood in front of the cliff of the alchemy pavilion and watched the flying immortal treasure land with his own eyes. He sighed softly and said, "Is he back? Won't you know if you go and see for yourself? After all, they are master and disciple. I don't think Yu Qianqiu is a heartless person." Yang Qian, who was standing beside him, laughed. Yang Qian also didn't expect that the kid who liked to wander around in the past would actually make such a big name in the cultivation world. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Sigh. He can't blame others. I, as his master, have never given him anything or taught him anything. Even when he was about to be expelled from the sect, I didn't stand out to protect him. Guan Weiwu looked in the direction of Penglai Pavilion and laughed bitterly. Ah! Cutting off ties. I, as his master, have hurt his heart. It's fine if I don't go. In front of Penglai Pavilion, Yu Qianqiu looked around and was instantly shocked. He could see supporting Immortal Island disciples everywhere. When he was in supporting Immortal Island, he had never seen so many disciples loitering around Penglai Pavilion. Could it be that supporting Immortal Island secretly recruited many disciples? But why didn't he hear 100 Charm Beauty mention it before? Yu Qianqiu looked around suspiciously. It seemed that all the people walking around were staring at him. Something was wrong. As he thought of this, he also became vigilant. Ze nodded secretly. The world's #1 sect was indeed the world's #1 sect. Just by looking around, there were actually so many low-level disciples. Let's go. The sect leader and the others are waiting for you in Penglai Pavilion. Dongfang Chang Ao said as he put away his flying immortal treasure. Oh, Sihai had already gone in without saying a word. Is Aunt Jo here too? Yu Qianqiu asked. Dongfang Chang Ao looked up at Penglai Pavilion and said, Aunt Jo should be here too. Let's go up and wait. Yu Qianqiu also looked up and said with an expressionless face, how would I dare to trouble Aunt Jo? I'd better go to Mulberry Garden and pay my respects to her personally. Elder Dongfang, please inform her first so that there won't be any misunderstandings. With that said, he unsheathed the long sword on his back and flew towards Mulberry Garden. Ze also followed. Dongfang Chang Ao was stunned and immediately understood that he didn't want to meet the sect leader and the others. He looked up and saw that Feng Xiangtian had already appeared in front of the window with a gloomy face. This brat didn't give me any face at all. Dongfang Chang Ao shook his head helplessly and sent a message in the direction of Mulberry Garden. He then entered Penglai Pavilion. The disciples near Penglai Pavilion were slowly walking in the direction of Mulberry Garden as if nothing had happened. Mulberry Garden was still lush and lush. In the inner garden, Lan Bingshu had already helped Ma Jiu to stand in the courtyard. Yu Qianqiu and Ze landed in the outer garden. To show respect to Ma Jiu, the two ignored the gazes of others and directly walked into the inner garden. As soon as he saw Ma Jiu, Yu Qianqiu immediately bowed and said, Yu Qianqiu greets Aunt Jo. After getting up, he didn't even look at Lan Bingshu. He didn't even think about putting on an act towards this woman who had hurt his woman. Sooner or later, he would settle the score with her. Lan Bingshu's expression slightly changed. Ma Jiu nodded and smiled, it's good that you came. Then she looked at Ze and asked, you must be Miss Ze. With this question, it seemed that Ze's performance in the saber drawing assembly had made her famous in the world. Ze didn't speak. No matter how high Ma Jiu's seniority was, it couldn't be higher than her. Yu Qianqiu quickly replied respectfully, Aunt Jo, she is indeed Ze. Ma Jiao didn't mind. She looked at Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, "This old woman won't talk nonsense, lest you youngsters talk too much to me. Yu Qianqiu, that year in this garden, you owed this old woman a promise. Today, this old woman summoned you to fulfill this promise. Are you willing? Elder Dongfang has already informed me. Since this junior has come, ninth aunt, please do not hesitate to instruct me. As long as this junior is able to do it, I will definitely do my best to accomplish it," Yu Qianqiu said respectfully. "Good. This old woman didn't misjudge you. You are indeed a trustworthy and responsible man." Ma Jiao nodded and said with a smile, "What I want you to do is very simple. This old woman wants you to rejoin supporting Immortal Island." This. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. When he came here, he had thought of the worst and even made all sorts of plans. He didn't expect that he would rejoin supporting Immortal Island. Ziyi also looked at Yu Qianqiu in a daze. How was it possible for Senior Bai's disciple to rejoin supporting Immortal Island? Why? Is this request making things difficult for you? Ma Jiao thought that Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed and said with a smile, "Let bygones be bygones. Don't take it to heart. If anyone dares to gossip, this old woman will be the first to deal with him." Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and said, "Aunt Jiao, it's not that I don't want to agree, but this junior can't. I already have a master, so how can I join supporting Immortal Island?" Ziyi also nodded and said, "Yes, he can't join supporting Immortal Island. If he does that and offends his master, I'm afraid that supporting Immortal Island will disappear from the cultivation world." Ma Jiao looked at Lan Bingxue speechlessly. She wasn't speechless because of Yu Qianqiu's rejection, but because of Ziyi's arrogant tone. If someone else had said this, Ma Jiao would have treated it as nonsense. However, it was different when Ziyi said it. Everyone in the cultivation world knew that Ziyi could easily deal with 7 experts at the late stage of the crossing tribulation stage. There was also her mysterious master, Mr. Nongzhu, and the unheard of South Sea purple bamboo forest. Everything indicated that Ziyi's background wasn't simple. Now that she said such words, the so-called master of Yu Qianqiu might really be someone that supporting Immortal Island couldn't afford to offend. "Yu Qianqiu, can you tell this old woman who your master is?" Ma Jiao asked. "This." Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and said slowly, "Although you haven't met my master, when we were training in the demon domain, my master injured you and the seniors of supporting Immortal Island." "What? He's your master?" Ma Jiaogu shuddered when she heard this. The terrifying scene from back then was still deeply engraved in her mind. A thunderous and sonorous divine sense had instantly injured a group of people. That person's cultivation was unimaginable. That person was an invincible existence. Chapter 379. "Aunt Jiao, please keep this secret for me." Yu Qianqiu bowed and said, "Aunt Jiao, is there anything else you want me to do?" "As long as it's within my capabilities, I will do my best." Ma Jiao looked at him with a complicated expression. She didn't expect him to find such a powerful backer. No wonder he dared to be so unscrupulous in the cultivation world. She shook her head and said, "I can't think of anything for the time being. Stay on supporting Immortal Island for a day and I'll let you know when I think of something." Yu Qianqiu hesitated for a moment before he said, "I would like to do something to offset the promise I made back then. I wonder if you, Aunt Jiao, would agree." This promise was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. He really wanted to resolve this matter as soon as possible. Otherwise, others might use it against him in the future. "Oh. What is it?" Ma Jiao's eyes lit up. "Why don't you tell me? If I help you, Aunt Jiao, increase your lifespan by another 150 years, I wonder if I can cancel out this promise." Yu Qianqiu slowly said. When these words were spoken, everyone was greatly shocked. Could he, Yu Qianqiu, really do something as heaven-defying as allowing someone to live for another 150 years for no reason? Even Ziyi looked at him with a face full of shock. Ma Jiu's chest heaved up and down and her breathing became rapid. She didn't have much time left to live. What kind of concept would it be if she could live for another 150 years? Perhaps she would have a chance to break through to that legendary realm. After calming down, her eyes flickered and she said, "I won't use your promise to tie you down for the rest of your life. Rest for a day and let me think about it. I'll give you an answer tomorrow. In that case, I'll take my leave." Yu Qianqiu bowed and left the mulberry garden with Ziyi. After watching the two leave, Lan Bingxue turned her head and said, "Aunt Zhou, why didn't you agree to him? If he can really extend your lifespan by another 150 years, it will be a great thing, 150 years of lifespan." Ma Jiugu murmured with a confused expression. Lan Bingxue stayed silent with her for a while, then suddenly asked in a low voice, "Aunt Zhou, who is Yu Qianqiu's master?" When she was supporting Ma Jiugu just now, when Yu Qianqiu mentioned the origin of his master, Ma Jiugu's body trembled. She could clearly feel it. She really wanted to know who could make Ma Jiugu so shocked. "I've fought him, but I've never met him." Ma Jiugu gave a simple reply. Although she kept Lan Bingxue by her side, she wouldn't let Lan Bingxue know about some matters that involved the core of the sect. She didn't know why. Lan Bingxue lowered her head and stopped asking. Knowing that Ma Jiugu would give him an answer tomorrow, Yu Qianqiu instantly felt relieved. It was better to settle this matter earlier than later. Now that he was in a good mood, he led Ziyi out of the mulberry garden, letting Ziyi appreciate the 10,000 fragrance garden that was full of spirit grasses. "Are these all spirit grasses?" Ziyi's pretty face melted. Smelling the fragrance, looking at the grass, vines, flowers, and willows all over the mountains and fields, her face bloomed with innocent curiosity. Compared to the monotonous purple bamboo forest, the scenery here was much more vivid and lively. "Yes, they are all spirit grasses." Yu Qianqiu nodded his head. In his heart, he thought, "This is nothing. If there is a chance, I will let you go to my territory and see what is called the most complete variety of spirit grasses." Now that he was in the 10,000 fragrance garden, he naturally had to go to the main hall, where his woman was. At the entrance of the main hall, Fernand and Furong had been waiting for a long time. There was no one around, so it seemed that they had been asked to leave. The expressionless former came back from Penglai Pavilion. He was originally with the head and the others, but who knew that Yu Qianqiu did not give face to the head of the #1 sect in the world and went directly to see Ma Jiugu. Fernand had to go back to the 10,000 fragrance garden to wait for Yu Qianqiu. He had already decided in his heart that if Yu Qianqiu did not come to the 10,000 fragrance garden to see him after he came to the mulberry garden, he would carefully consider the relationship between this guy and his daughter. Furong's face was full of joy. Fernand was afraid that his daughter would be too happy and be seen by others about Yu Qianqiu's return, so he specially blocked the news from her. It was not until just now that he told her, and he also gave her a lot of instructions. Senior Fei. Yu Qianqiu saluted awkwardly. Since he was caught in bed last time, he felt that the 3 words, Senior Fei, were not smooth no matter how he called him. Hearing this, Fernand also had a strange expression. He nodded slightly, and his eyes fell on Ziyi. Furong called out cheerfully, "Yu Qianqiu." Her voice was still so pleasant to hear. Yu Qianqiu smiled at her. In public, it was not good to show too much affection. "Come in and talk." After Fernand finished speaking, he was just about to turn around, but his body stopped, and he looked at the outside of Myriad Fragrance Garden with a twitching expression. Several people also looked over, and Yu Qianqiu was also stunned. He saw that in the forest outside Myriad Fragrance Garden, there were flying swords flying everywhere, and there were probably no less than thousands of them. Damn! What are they doing? Yu Qianqiu looked at Fernand suspiciously. Fernand said in a deep voice, "You will know when you go out and take a look." He naturally had to listen to his future father-in-law's words. Yu Qianqiu immediately turned around and walked out of Myriad Fragrance Garden, and Ze followed him. He wouldn't know if he didn't look, but he was shocked when he saw that there were probably no less than 400 to 500 people, and all of them were controlling the swords. Some were controlling 2 or 3 swords, and some were controlling more than 10 swords at the same time. No wonder there were so many flying swords flying everywhere. Yu Qianqiu said blankly, "Guiyuan sword technique. Since when did this place become a training ground? Since when did Guiyuan sword technique become popular on Fuxian Island?" As soon as Yu Qianqiu appeared, the flying swords flying everywhere were all collected, and hundreds of excited eyes stared at him. Someone took the lead and shouted, "Greetings, Senior Yu Qianqiu." Then, it was a mess, and cheers came one after another. Everyone gathered around as well. Fernand, who was in front of the main hall, shook his head and smiled bitterly, but Furong's face was full of pride for her man. "You all know me." Yu Qianqiu pointed at himself and asked in shock. He thought to himself, "Why don't I know any of you?" Everyone shook their heads and nodded, and their eyes were burning. This is the legendary idol. Yu Qianqiu was confused, and he looked at Purple Dress, but it seemed like Purple Dress also didn't understand why these people shook their heads and nodded. At this moment, a disciple plucked up his courage and came over to greet. "We are the younger generation disciples of Fuxian Island, and we have long heard of Senior's great name. I heard that Senior is cultivating Guiyuan sword technique, and we are the same, but it is difficult for us to unleash the power of Senior, so we specially rushed over to meet Senior, hoping that Senior can give us pointers." Fans. Yu Qianqiu looked at everyone's burning eyes, and 2 words suddenly popped up in his head. Looking at these people again, some were hugging a few swords, and some were hugging a large pile of swords. This Guiyuan sword technique is really hard to cultivate, and even their weapons are a lot more than others. It was obvious that these were some low-level disciples, and they didn't even have the money to buy storage bags. Speaking of storage bags, Tan family, one of the 4 major families, made them. Last time, they ruthlessly took a large pile from Tan family head. Yu Qianqiu coughed, cleared his throat, and said loudly, "I also didn't expect that there are so many people cultivating Guiyuan sword technique like me, and I came in a hurry, so I didn't prepare any greeting gifts for you. How about this?" He took out 2 storage bags from his storage bag, pointed at 2 people in front of him, smiled and waved, "Come here." The 2 disciples who were pointed at suddenly became excited, and with a pile of swords in their hands, they excitedly walked in front of their idol and bowed, "Senior." No need to be so polite, no need to be so polite. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, and smiled amiably. In these 2 storage bags, one contains spirit stones, and the other contains storage bags. You too, distribute the things inside. As long as someone is present, each person will get 10 pieces of upper-grade spirit stones, and 1 storage bag. Go! With that said, he handed over the 2 storage bags. Wow! Hundreds of people immediately became excited, so excited. Since when did they get 10 pieces of upper-grade spirit stones, not even 1 piece? Moreover, each person was given a storage bag, which was exactly what they needed. No wonder he was the legendary Senior Yu. This generosity, this amiable attitude that didn't put on airs, ordinary people couldn't be compared to him. The 2 disciples quickly put the swords in their hands on the ground, took the storage bags with both hands, and bowed, "Thank you, Senior." Then, they turned around and distributed the bags. Hundreds of people expressed their gratitude in unison, attracting the attention of those with high cultivation on supporting Immortals Island. When the two disciples' divine senses entered the storage bags, they were shocked. So many spirit stones, so many storage bags. Both of them looked back at Yu Qianqiu at the same time. There was a beautiful lady beside him. No wonder he was the legendary Senior Yu. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Quickly distribute the bags." The two disciples immediately got busy. They distributed the storage bags one by one, 10 pieces of upper-grade spirit stones. The disciples who got the items were also aware. They excitedly put the flying swords and spirit stones into the storage bags, then stood at the side, to prevent the repeated distribution. After all, there were still some big sex teachings inside. When Yu Qianqiu saw the disciples who got the items were happy, he was also happy. A few hundred people, 10 spirit stones for each person is only a few thousand pieces. A few thousand pieces of upper-grade spirit stones and hundreds of storage bags can buy the hearts of a few hundred people. Even if he was short of money, he can't be stingy. No matter whether the hearts of the people he bought will be useful in the future, it is definitely worth it. Ziyi saw that Yu Qianqiu was actually distributing the spirit stones. She was worried. She couldn't understand why he did this. It is not easy to earn some money. The liveliness outside made Furong also excited. She wanted to come out and share with Yu Qianqiu, but when she remembered her father's instructions, she was afraid that it will have a bad influence on Yu Qianqiu. She still held back. But Ferdinand's face turned ashen. This kid is too arrogant. He actually openly bought the hearts of the people in Fuxian Island. He doesn't know what low-key is. The spirit stones and storage bags were distributed very quickly. The two disciples sent the rest back. Yu Qianqiu took the storage bags, first gave a storage bag to each of them, then gave 100 upper-grade spirit stones to each of them. He smiled and said, "You have worked hard, don't think it is too little." "Thank you, Senior." The two of them received it happily, not to mention that Yu Qianqiu personally gave it. The spirit stones are 10 times more than the others. When did the two of them get 100 upper-grade spirit stones? The flying swords and spirit stones on the ground were put into the storage bags. The two of them hung the storage bags on their waists. The happy expression on their faces can't be stopped. From today onwards, we are also people with bags. "Senior, please give us pointers on Guiyuan sword technique." The two of them looked at each other, suddenly bowed at the same time. Hundreds of people also bowed together and said, "Senior, please give us pointers." In this kind of atmosphere, Yu Qianqiu was also in high spirits. He found the feeling of being a teacher. After adjusting his mood, his face became solemn. He slowly paced and said, "There is no pointers. I also don't know how to give pointers, but you all remember my words. Although all the sects in the world have thousands of spells, although each has its own magical power, the myriad changes do not deviate from the original. The sea of spells is boundless, but there is a path in the spells. Hard work is the path. Only through suffering can one become superior. The lack of talent can be made up for by hard work. As long as you all remember these, sooner or later you will be able to walk a path of glory that belongs to you. You don't need to imitate others everywhere. Only the things that you comprehend yourself truly belong to you. This is all I want to say. You may wish to think about it." Ferdinand, who was in the garden, was stunned. He didn't expect this little rascal to actually be able to say such a reason. A few experts of supporting Immortal Island who were secretly paying attention to this, also fell into deep thought after hearing this. They faintly felt that Yu Qianqiu's words were somewhat reasonable. It was worth pondering. In fact, Yu Qianqiu himself was just fooling around. He just casually changed the words that he heard in his previous life and felt that it was reasonable. He didn't care whether it was really useful. The key was to say it now. It was enough. However, he didn't know that his words had really caused two extraordinary figures to emerge from these disciples. Chapter 380. In the courtyard behind the Wanfen Garden's main hall, Ziyi stood in the courtyard and looked at a tightly shut door with a puzzled expression. Yu Qianqiu and Furong had entered the room again. Furong was the same as Wulishua and was also making some strange sounds. Ze could not understand it no matter how she thought about it. After half a day, Yu Qianqiu came out of the room happily. Ze walked over and asked, "What are you guys doing?" Yu Qianqiu didn't answer and instructed with a serious expression, "Now, help me guard this room and don't let anyone in. I have something important to do." Ze saw that he was serious and immediately agreed. Yu Qianqiu then went back into the room. Furong, who was tidying up her clothes, still had an amorous expression on her face. Yu Qianqiu hugged her and disappeared. Furong wasn't surprised at all as she was used to it. Utopia's misty palace, Bai Suzhen was sitting cross-legged with the green destiny sword in her hand. She would draw something in the air with her slender fingers. Then, she would shake her head and go into deep thought. It was obvious that she hadn't broken the restriction on the sword. Yu Qianqiu, who suddenly appeared, looked at her silently and didn't disturb her. His eyes revealed a pitiful expression. Such a beautiful woman had been doing such boring things. He didn't know how long she hadn't gone out. It was all for him. Bai Suzhen suddenly looked up and was startled. She put down the sword and smiled gently. "You are here. It's just a broken sword. It's fine if I can't break the restriction on it. At most, I will just use it as a high-grade artifact. You don't have to make things difficult for yourself." Yu Qianqiu looked at her and smiled. "I have some ideas." After Bai Suzhen indirectly rejected him, she sized him up. Seeing that he was quite energetic, she calmed down and asked calmly, "What's the matter?" "I can concoct the 7 orifices exquisite pill now." Yu Qianqiu smiled. Bai Suzhen was surprised and asked, "You found the resurrection grass?" "I haven't picked it yet, but I can pick it any time." "Sister, help me prepare 3 mature 7-star blood orchids and 3 strands of Adumbra flowers silk. I'll go pick the soul-returning grass now and meet up with you here." "Got it." Bai Suzhen nodded with a gentle smile and went out. Yu Qianqiu stared blankly at her back for a while before disappearing. Outside the great door of the netherworld, Yu Qianqiu, who had suddenly appeared, subconsciously looked around. Although it was not his first time here, the atmosphere here was really suffocating. He glanced at the tightly shut gates of the netherworld. The heaven-swallowing beast that was missing a knocker and 2 of its teeth was still the same. The skulls on the netherworld wall were still staring at him with boundless terror. Now was not the time to enjoy the scenery. Yu Qianqiu walked to the side of the netherworld steel that was guarding it. He raised his hand and released 3 pillars of water, directly sealing the 3 resurrection grass in ice. Then, he pulled out the ice pillars along with the resurrection grass and disappeared with the ice pillars. Bai Suzhen had already returned to the room to wait for him. Seeing him appear with 3 ice pillars, she asked in surprise, This thing is not something of the mortal world. When I picked it, I couldn't see it in public or else it would immediately turn into smoke. I directly sealed it in ice and brought it here." Hearing his words, Bai Suzhen discovered that there were indeed 3 stalks of red spiritual herbs in the icicle, which were similar in color to the 7-star snow orchid. Carefully looking at them, she asked, "You can enter and exit the 9 netherworld cave at any time now?" "That's right. Now, I can enter and exit the 9th netherworld cave at any time." Yu Qianqiu smiled proudly. Then, his expression turned solemn as he said, "Sis, let's not waste any more time. I still have to rush back. Let's start now." He raised the 3 icicles with his palm, and the cyan flame that had become faintly transparent due to the lower temperature instantly wrapped around the icicles. The 3 icicles instantly turned into mist and evaporated, while the 3 spirit herbs also turned into sparkling red spiritual liquid. Yu Qianqiu looked at the changes in his palm. His gaze deepened as he said, "Adumbra guarding the soul, soul replenishing the soul, and 7-star body building." There are 3 portions of each. Although this 7-orifices exquisite pill only requires these 3 spirit herbs to refine, each of them is a precious treasure and is truly hard to come by. Sis, toss in the other 2. Sujan obeyed and tossed the Adumbra flower and 7-star blood orchid into the azure flames. Yu Qianqiu immediately acted as if he was facing a great enemy. He carefully controlled the flames with a cold expression. After all, these were not ordinary spirit pills. It would be a pity if they were wasted. Sujan shifted her gaze from the azure flames to Yu Qianqiu's face. His exceptionally serious expression made Sujan feel a little dazed. He was no longer that useless disciple on Guangceng from back then. The massive wealth and manpower that Utopia possessed were all built by him step by step. Once these powers matured and officially appeared in the cultivation world, it would definitely shock the world. Just how far could he go on this path? After an unknown period of time, a red light suddenly appeared in the room, pulling Sujan back from her daze. She saw Yu Qianqiu's palm emitting a red light that resembled blood patterns. The red light rippled gently in the room. With a smile on his face, Yu Qianqiu picked up a pill to take a look. He couldn't see the shape of the pill in his fingers. All he could see was a blood-red shadow. It was clearly a demonic color, but it didn't feel demonic. The pure red patterns were soft. You've succeeded, Sujan said in surprise. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, 9 pills in 1 cauldron. Not a single one is missing. It's done. At that moment, everyone in Utopia cast their gazes above Ethereal Peak. They saw the entire ethereal palace suddenly emit a blood-red glow that soared into the sky. After the wind and clouds in the sky were stimulated by the red light, they stirred silently. Gradually, the wind and clouds formed the shape of a dragon and a tiger. They circled and chased each other. It was a spectacular sight. After a full 15 minutes, the blood-red light converged. Only then did the dragon and tiger gradually dissipate, leaving everyone dumbfounded. The 2 people in the room were still looking at the spirit pills. They didn't know that when the pills were formed, an auspicious sign had already appeared in the sky outside. This was a sign that would only appear when a truly heaven-defying spirit pill had been refined. The 7 orifices exquisite pill could compete with the heavens and earth, so it was naturally a heaven-defying spirit pill. Sis, I'll take 1 and leave first. Give the remaining 2 to my parents. Keep the rest safe. I'll get them from you when I need them. Yu Qianqiu gave 8 spirit pills to Sujan and put 1 into his storage bag. He smiled and left. By the time he returned to Myriad Fragrance Garden, it was already the next morning. Furong had been waiting for him in the room. When she saw him, she called out happily, Yu Qianqiu. No matter how close the 2 of them were, Furong liked to call him that, and every time she called him that, she would be very happy. I'm going to the mulberry garden to find Aunt Jo. After I see her, I might leave immediately. Yu Qianqiu hugged her and whispered into her ear. Furong hurriedly said, I'll go with you. Be good. Yu Qianqiu directly said these 2 words. Furong understood what he meant and didn't say much. She only said quietly, then you have to come and see me often. As time goes by, I'll miss you very much. Yu Qianqiu pushed her away and smiled in return. He resolutely turned around and opened the door. When he opened the door, he saw that Ze was still standing at the door, looking back at him. Yu Qianqiu unsheathed the long sword on his back and soared into the sky. Ze immediately followed. Furong ran out of the room and blankly stared at the 2 figures flying away. In the mulberry garden, they faced each other again. Yu Qianqiu stepped forward and bowed to Ma Jiu, asking, Aunt Jo, have you made up your mind? Ma Jiu gently pushed away Lan Bingxue, who was supporting her, and walked to Yu Qianqiu with the help of her walking stick. She looked at him and asked, Yu Qianqiu, this old woman will entrust you with a task that is within your ability. However, this task may take a long time. Can you promise me? Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. From what she said, it seemed that she didn't want to live for another 150 years. Could it be that there was something that she could do in exchange for prolonging her life? He couldn't help but ask, Aunt Jo, do you have something else you want me to do? Ma Jo shook her head and said, answer me first. If it is within your ability, can you guarantee that no matter how much energy and time you spend, you can fulfill your promise to this old woman? This junior will naturally do it if it's within my ability, replied Yu Qianqiu respectfully. Good. Ma Zhou's old eyes suddenly lit up and she slowly said, I want you to promise me that no matter what happens in the future, this old woman will entrust the safety of Yan Zixia and her daughter to you. You must do your best to protect them and not let anyone harm them, unless you, Yu Qianqiu, are no longer in this world. Can you do it? This. Yu Qianqiu didn't expect such a request. He frowned and said, forgive this junior for speaking bluntly, but this junior will think of a way to prolong senior's life by 150 years. With senior on supporting Immortal Island, won't you be able to protect them better than this junior? He just wanted to solve this problem once and for all and didn't want to create another burden. What he didn't know was that Ma Jiu wanted this promise from him was because she found out that Yan Zixia had fallen in love with him. Ma Jiu was prepared to use this promise at a critical time to fulfill their marriage. But now, the situation in the cultivation world didn't look good and Ma Jiu faintly felt that something big was about to happen. The women of the Guan clan have suffered too much, and the women who married out of the Guan clan suffered even more. None of them had a good ending, and this seems to have become the fate of the Guan clan's women. That's why I've never married. Back then, I was the one who supported the marriage between Yan Bugui and Bai Hua. My goal was to prevent the men from the Guan family from arranging her fate, so that she could escape the fate of dying a horrible death. But I was wrong. Yan Bugui has disappointed me too much. Since this old woman made a mistake, this old woman has to bear the consequences. But no one knows what will happen in the future, and I'm afraid that this old woman won't be able to protect them. Yu Qianqiu, this old woman believes that you can prolong this old woman's life by 150 years. But this old woman has lived long enough, so I'm willing to exchange my 150 years with you. Help me protect them and don't let anyone bully them. Ma Jiu slowly said. So that's how it is. Yu Qianqiu hesitated. To be honest, it wasn't a good thing to accept this task. It was definitely a troublesome matter. But the debt of the past must be repaid. He just didn't expect the interest to be so heavy. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath and nodded with a sigh. This junior will agree to senior's request. Chapter 381. Ma Jiugu had always been nice to him. Seeing her so lonely, he almost gave her the 7 orifices exquisite pellet for free. But on second thought, he had to pay the price for what he did, so Ma Jiugu should do the same. The most important thing was not to let too many people know that he had such a pellet. Otherwise, there would be big trouble. Thank you, then. Ma Jiugu nodded with a gratified expression. This is what I owe you, so I should return it. But... Yu Qianqiu looked at Lan Bingxue and begged, Jiugu, please help me keep my master's secret. Ma Jiugu paused for a moment. This matter could be said to be of great importance. She was already prepared to tell Feng Shangtian and the others about this after Yu Qianqiu left. She wanted them to pay attention to avoid unnecessary trouble. But she had just made a difficult request. It was a bit unreasonable for Lan Bingxue not to agree to such a small request. Ma Jiugu also looked at Lan Bingxue and said to Yu Qianqiu, don't worry. I won't tell anyone about your master. Thank you, senior. I'll visit you again when I have the chance. I'm leaving now. Yu Qianqiu bowed. Are you leaving Fuxian Island now? Ma Jiugu asked. Yes. I've promised 10,000 demons and moon sect. I'll go there. Yu Qianqiu replied. Moon sect. Qianghua. Ma Jiugu was also surprised. Why would Moon Sect invite a man? She didn't say anything and pointed her demon slayer wand at the sky. A white light shot out. Yu Qianqiu knew that she was opening the island's great formation for him, so he bowed and said, "Thank you, senior." The sword on his back shot out and carried him into the sky. A purple shadow chased after him. The two people in the mulberry garden watched as the two of them disappeared into the sky. Ma Jiugu suddenly sighed and said, "The sky is high, the birds fly, the sea is wide, the fish leap." I heard that Yu Qianqiu said such words when he was expelled from the sect. Now it seems that the young man's words were true. Bingxue, can you think of that? Back then, he was just a refinement stage disciple, but in just a dozen years, he has already become famous in the cultivation world. He has become a VIP that all the major sects are scrambling to invite. His achievements are extraordinary. No matter how high his achievements are, he still has to be polite to you. Lan Bingxue smiled. Ma Jiugu shook her head, turned around, and murmured in the direction of Penglai Pavilion. Feng Xiangtian, who was in the middle of the discussion, suddenly quieted down and listened attentively. Then, he frowned and remained silent. Ma Jiugu told him that it was impossible for Yu Qianqiu to join supporting Immortal Island again. In the future, supporting Immortal Island should try not to provoke Yu Qianqiu. Supporting Immortal Island couldn't afford to offend the person behind him. A man and a woman were flying across the sea towards the mainland. Zi suddenly asked, "Yu Qianqiu, you promised her to protect the mother and daughter. What about the task Senior Bai gave us?" With the number one sect in the world, the supporting Immortal Island, around, no one would dare to provoke the Hundred Flowers Palace. We don't need to guard it every day. I will ask the four families to keep an eye on it. If anything happens, we can talk about it. Then, Yu Qianqiu turned his head and smiled. Z, when you go to the Moon Clan this time, remember to get the money they promised first. Otherwise, it will be bad if they go back on their word. I know. When I see them, I will ask them to pay first. If they dare to go back on their word, humph. Help me see if there is anything valuable in the Moon Clan that can pay off the debt. I will move it back to the Wu family and ask them to sell it for money, Zi said without hesitation. It seemed that after staying with Wu Lixue for a few days, she had learned a lot about the Wu family. She was a fast learner. Ah. I see. Yu Qianqiu looked at her in surprise and nodded. He didn't expect that she would move things to pay off the debt. Yu Qianqiu was very happy for her improvement. Moon Clan. Yu Qianqiu didn't know where he was at first. Thinking of the disciples of the Moon Clan from the Ethereal Palace, he asked Chu Ping, and found out where he was. In the Longhuan mountain range, there were dense vegetation and ferocious beasts. There were few people there. There was a mountain that was high and steep, towering into the sky. Looking from afar, if one was on the mountain, he would be able to reach for the stars. The Moon Clan was at the top of the mountain. Yu Qianqiu and Zi flew here late at night. After seeing the mountain, they finally understood why it was called the Moon Clan. The mountain was so high that a bright moon seemed to be above their heads. They could see it when they looked up. Looking at the entire Moon Clan, from the top of the mountain, there were all kinds of buildings, covering the entire mountain. Under the bright moonlight, as soon as the two approached, they heard Hua Rui's voice from the top of the mountain. Are you Qianqiu and Zi here? She had obviously been waiting for a long time. Senior Hua, it is indeed the two of us. After Yu Qianqiu replied, the two of them descended. Hua Rui walked over and nodded with a smile. I thought you were going to stay on Fuxian Island for a few more days. It's good that you're here. Please follow me to see the clan leader. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Everyone in the cultivation world knew that Qionghua Fairy wouldn't come out to meet people easily. Now that the two of them had just arrived, they were being led to see her. This was really a big deal. However, it seemed that the main target was Ziyi. Did the Moon Clan already know Ziyi's master's identity? The moonlight was like water and the Moon Clan was high up in the sky. It looked a bit like the Moon Palace. With a stomach full of questions, Yu Qianqiu followed Hua Rui with Ziyi. They didn't go to the quiet and huge main hall of the Moon Clan. Instead, they went to a pavilion in the distance under the moonlight. From afar, they could vaguely see a woman standing in the pavilion. When they got closer, they couldn't see the woman because the angle was different. There was a board hanging on the pavilion. On it were 3 beautiful words, Silver Moon Pavilion. Obviously, it was also written by a woman. Hua Rui led the two of them up the pavilion, and they immediately saw a woman leaning against the railing. Her white robes were like frost, and her hair was coiled up into a bun. She was immersed in the mercury-like moonlight, graceful and lonely, and her back seemed rather desolate. Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. Is this the famous Qionghua Fairy of the Moon Clan? It was said that the Moon Clan was different from other clans. Every generation, the top cultivator of the clan would be the Moon Clan's leader. Is this woman the top cultivator of the Moon Clan? Leader, Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi are here, Hua Rui said. Without a doubt, it was the leader of the Moon Clan. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly bowed and said, Yu Qianqiu greets you, senior. Ziyi still stood there without moving. She didn't care about the leader or leader. The woman nodded. After hesitating for a long time, she slowly turned around. She didn't say anything and stared at Ziyi in a daze. With this look, it was hard for her to move her eyes away. Yu Qianqiu looked up. After seeing the woman's face, his eyes brightened. He couldn't stop clicking his tongue. It was said that the beauty of the Moon Clan's Qionghua Fairy was unparalleled in the world. This was not an exaggeration. She was even comparable to Bai Suzhen. But why did it feel like he had seen her somewhere before? No one spoke in the attic. Yu Qianqiu was also thinking hard. He just couldn't remember where he had seen her before. Anyway, she looked very familiar. Seeing that she kept staring at Ziyi, Yu Qianqiu subconsciously glanced at Ziyi. Then his eyes widened and his head swung back and forth between Ziyi and the Qionghua Fairy. Damn! No wonder she looked so familiar. If it wasn't for the fact that she looked like Nongzhu, she would be a replica of the Qionghua Fairy. Especially her mouth and nose. They were obviously made from the same mold. Yu Qianqiu's eyes were rolling around. Ziyi also felt that she had seen the Qionghua Fairy somewhere before, but she couldn't remember. Thus, the silence in the attic was broken by her. Ziyi asked, You are the leader of the Moon Clan? Yes. The Qionghua Fairy nodded excitedly. As soon as she spoke, Yu Qianqiu sighed inwardly. It was one thing for her to be so beautiful, but even her voice was so pleasant to the ears. No wonder she did not meet people easily. Just think about it, how could a normal man have such a calm disposition? Ziyi pointed at Hua Rui and said, She said that as long as I come, she will give me 20 million top-grade spiritual stones. Give me the money first. She still maintained her straightforward style of speaking. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu just stood aside obediently and didn't look anywhere. It was as if he was telling others that what she said had nothing to do with him. Are you usually short of money? The Qionghua Fairy's pleasant voice was heard. Her eyes were filled with concern. I've always been short of money. Ze stretched out her hand and said, give me the money you promised first. You've always been short of money. Cheonghua's voice was a little out of control. She looked at Ze up and down and bit her lip. Then she said in an agitated tone, where is your master? Has your master never given you any spiritual stones? No. Ze shook her head and said, give me the money first. If you go back on your words, who will I ask for the money from? We can talk about it after you give me the money. Hearing this, the Cheonghua fairy's face instantly turned pale. She looked at Ze with extreme pity. Endless sadness and annoyance flowed in her eyes, as if she had done something wrong to Ze. She said in a trembling voice, Rui, give her 20 million. No, give her 50 million. 50 million. Yu Qianqiu and Ze were stunned at the same time. Hua Rui sighed and shook her head. She took out a storage bag from her storage bag and gave it to Ze. Ze took it and couldn't wait to use her spiritual consciousness to check it. After that, she stared at the Cheonghua fairy and said, you gave me more than you wanted. I didn't force you. Don't go back on your words. I won't. Just take it. If you don't have enough, come to the Moon Clan to find me. When the Cheonghua fairy said this, her voice was a little choked. Yu Qianqiu secretly glanced at her and found that there were tears in her eyes. This confirmed his suspicion. There must be something going on. There must be something going on. Ze also seemed to realize that she had taken too much money. She said a little embarrassedly, since you gave me so much money, you can ask whatever you want. I'll tell you everything I can, but I definitely won't tell you what I can't say. The Cheonghua fairy nodded repeatedly. She turned around and wiped away the tears in her eyes. Then she turned back and asked, I heard that your master is called Mr. Nongzhu. What's her real name? Is it Xiaoyao? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.